I woke up in a strange place. The last thing I remember was saving a little girl from a lake in the park. I pulled her out, but then my leg cramped and I fell back into the water. Now I was somewhere completely different. This wasn't a hospital. This wasn't home. I looked down at my body. It was small, maybe 5 feet 3 inches, and skinny like I hadn't eaten in weeks. This wasn't my body at all. A sharp pain hit my head, and I passed out again. When I woke up, memories flooded in. Not mine, but belonging to the boy whose body I now lived in. His name was Feared. He was about 15 years old, a free commoner in what looked like a medieval Western world. I decided to keep his name. My old Chinese name wouldn't fit here anyway. Feared's life had been miserable. He and his father survived by working on rich men's land for scraps of food. After his father died last year, things got much worse. He couldn't get a full meal. Even the dogs in the village tried to bite him. My stomach twisted with pain and my hands were shaking. From what I remembered of medical school, which I barely passed, this was stomach cramps and low blood sugar. This body could die any moment. I had to find food. I dragged myself toward a small town called Luben, which belonged to some baron. It took me a long time to walk there. I headed straight to the poor side of town, where the streets smelled terrible and people sold cheap goods from shabby stalls. I found a bread stall and asked the woman running it, Aunt Lima, if I could buy a black bread on credit. I told her I was planning to sell my house. Her face changed from annoyed to interested real fast. She handed me a loaf of dark, hard bread made from rye. It weighed about a pound and felt like a rock. But before I could grab it, she pulled it back. She said her 6th son needed a house and offered me 30 copper pennies for mine. She tried to convince me it was a fair deal because of the orc raids driving prices down, and because my house was barely more than a shack. I nodded politely and said I'd think about it, then snatched the bread and walked away. No way I'd take that offer. My house was worth at least 60 copper pennies, about 2 silver coins. The old Feared never sold it because his father made him promise to keep it, or he'd end up a serf. But I wasn't bound by that promise. Still, I wasn't going to let this woman cheat me. I ate the bread slowly while walking through town. Soon I came across a crowd gathered around a man named Fellier, who was recruiting fighters. He said a knight named Walker needed warriors because another knight had stolen his farmland. The pay was 4 copper pennies a day, with a minimum of 10 even if the fight lasted less than 2 days. Extra pay if you brought your own weapon. Then a young man named Kevin shouted from the crowd, calling Fellier a liar. He said he'd worked 3 days last time, but only got paid for 2. Fellier fired back, saying Kevin had run away before the fight was over and was lucky to get anything at all. He mocked Kevin, saying he should go wash clothes with the women instead. The crowd laughed. Some men even catcalled Kevin. The boy cursed back, but eventually left, outnumbered. Fellier kept recruiting. More people complained about not getting full pay, but he handled every question smoothly. He'd clearly done this many times. I watched Kevin walk away toward the edge of town. Something about him caught my attention. I hurried after him and called out, "Hey, friend, can we talk?" He turned around and looked at me with suspicious eyes. "You probably don't know me," I said to the boy. "I'm from this town. Call me Feared. I just want to ask you some questions. Can we talk somewhere?" He looked at me with sharp, suspicious eyes. "If it's real business, fine. But if you're some kind of creep, I swear I'll cut off something you won't miss." I almost choked. "Buddy, you've got the wrong idea. I just want to hear about your time as a mercenary." "I'm really interested." He relaxed a little. Then his eyes landed on the bread in my hand. "Sure, but you have to pay me. Give me that black bread. I'll give you half," I said. "It's just a few simple questions." He nodded fast, like he was afraid I'd change my mind. We sat under a tree and I got straight to the point. I asked him to tell me everything about being a mercenary, not a made-up story, but his real experience. He scratched his head, not sure where to begin. Most people in this town had dull eyes and could barely string a sentence together. But this kid had the guts to talk back to that recruiter, so I figured he had some brains. I softened my tone. "Don't be nervous. Just chat. Where are you from? Who's in your family?" "I'm from Ratland Village," he said quickly. "I live with my mother and older brother." "What are you doing in town?" "Looking for work. Trying to earn some copper pennies or food." "No luck so far. How does your family get by?" "We have a few acres on the hillside where we grow rye, but it doesn't produce much. During busy season we farm. The rest of the time we look for odd jobs." Then I brought the conversation back to mercenary work. He thought for a moment and started talking. Last year I was in town looking for work and heard someone recruiting mercenaries. I was starving, so I signed up. They took us to Nightwalker's land. First 2 days, we just carried rocks and logs to a wooden fort. Then they handed me a wooden spear, and the knight led us to a riverbank. On the other side, another knight had his own group of people. Both sides yelled insults for a while, then the fighting started. The other side had more men. Both knights were on horses. Everything got chaotic fast. Someone came at me, and we jabbed at each other with our wooden spears. Neither of us could land a hit, so we ended up wrestling on the ground. He rolled up his torn linen sleeve and showed me a bite mark on his arm. This scum bit me. We fought for a bit. Then I saw people running away, so I ran too. The whole thing lasted about 2 days. And that bastard Fellier docked me a full day's pay. Only gave me 4 copper pennies. That was my life on the line. Hearing all this, I got a decent picture of what mercenary life was like. It was actually a bit safer than I'd imagined. I broke the bread in half and handed him his share. Times are tough right now. Take this as your payment. He took it gratefully. Thank you for your kindness. If you ever need anything, come find me. It's just half a loaf, I said. I live on the east edge of town. Come find me if you need something. Then I left. I didn't go home. Instead, I went around town knocking on doors of wealthier households, asking if anyone wanted to buy my house. Most turned me down. The place really was a dump. But 3 showed interest. The highest offer came from a hunter, 70 copper pennies. That was better than I expected, so I took the deal right away. While I was at the hunter's place, I noticed he had several bows. They were all homemade and not great quality, but I asked if I could buy one. After some haggling, I paid 30 copper pennies for a crude single-piece bow and 5 arrows. The arrows cost more than the bow itself, since the bow was just his own labor, but the arrowheads had to be bought from a blacksmith. We went to the Lord's office and signed a contract for the house sale. Then I couldn't wait to test my new bow. In my past life, I was a serious archery hobbyist. I wasn't professional level, but I was pretty good. This bow had about 30 pounds of draw weight, basically garbage. Its effective range was maybe a few dozen meters, and it couldn't kill anything big. But it was better than nothing. I fired a few shots and the feel was decent enough. After that, I went to the second-hand market and spent 5 copper pennies on a beautifully made oversized pot lid. I also bought some iron nails, hemp rope, and other small things for 2 copper pennies. I looked around for weapons but couldn't find any, so I headed to the only blacksmith shop in town. The blacksmith spotted me from a distance. Little feared. Sorry, I don't have any work for you. Try somewhere else if you're looking for odd jobs. Uncle Joseph, I said, I'm not here for work. My father old feared is gone, and no one wants to hire someone as skinny as me. I've decided to become a mercenary. Only that kind of life or death work won't be picky about who they take. I came to see if you have any decent weapons. Uncle Joseph's bored face turned interested when I told him my plan. But he warned me to be careful. Being a mercenary isn't easy. You might think those small noble recruitments count as mercenary work, but that's just brawling. Real mercenaries fight in real battles, baron-level wars and above, and those lords only hire proper mercenary companies. I smiled and told him I was just planning to start small, working for the local nobles. Having a real weapon would at least help me look the part. He nodded. Most of what I have is low-grade rough iron, good enough for farm tools, but not for weapons. Proper weapons need refined iron from the Viscount city. But over the years, some broke wandering fighters have sold me their weapons. Most are junk, but a few are usable. Let me show you. He came back, dragging a sack that clinked with metal. We spread everything out on the table. There were over a dozen pieces. 2 oversized 2-handed swords with blades way too thick and not even straight. Those would snap easily. Several one-handed swords with the same problem. 1 short sword that was okay, but too heavy. For daggers, 2 of which were decent. A few spearheads, only 3 worth considering. And a pair of axes, 1 large, 1 small, which looked like the best items in the lot. I asked about the short sword, daggers, and spearheads. Joseph laid out the prices. Spearheads were 25 copper pennies each at cost, with a free spear shaft thrown in. Daggers were 30 each, no discount. The short sword was 60 at cost, and he wasn't even recommending it. Said it looked nice, but was mostly for show. I did the math. I had 40 copper pennies left, minus 2 I owed Aunt Lima. That gave me 38 to spend. I decided on a dagger. My plan was to fight as an archer anyway, so a dagger for close range made sense. Joseph sharpened the blade for me and even reinforced my oversized pot lid with some wooden strips. Just like that, a very poorly equipped mercenary was born. I left the shop, paid back Aunt Lima her 2 copper pennies, and bought another black bread for 2 more. That left me with 11 copper pennies total. Then I headed straight to Fellier's recruitment spot. He saw me coming from a distance, a boy carrying a bow with a dagger at his waist. Before I could even speak, he called out, "Hey, kid with the weapons. Want to join up? I'll pay you 5 copper pennies a day until the fight's over." I pointed to my bow. "Kind steward Fellier, I'm an archer, a technical mercenary. I want 7 copper pennies a day. I know it's more, but I'm worth it." He hesitated, then said, 6 a day max. "And if it's less than 2 days, I'll pay you 15. That's generous, considering you don't have any armor." I didn't argue. "Deal. I pledge my loyalty to the Walker family." He nodded, satisfied. "Go wait in the back with the others. I'll lead everyone out at dusk." I walked over to the group. There were already a dozen or so people gathered. Most of them were thin, ragged, and pitiful. Their weapons were mostly just sharpened sticks. Only a few had anything real. I sat at the edge of the group, pulled out my black bread, and started eating slowly to rebuild my strength. That got people's attention fast. Before long, a skinny young man walked up to me holding a pointed stick. "Hey kid, joining our group costs an entry fee. Hand over that bread and we'll accept you." I didn't even look up. I'm hired directly by Nightwalker. I don't belong to any group. He didn't like that at all. "You ungrateful little bastard. I'll teach you some manners." He swung his wooden spear at my back. He wasn't trying to kill me, just hitting me with the shaft to bully me. But I'd been watching him the whole time. The moment he moved, I rolled sideways, pulled my dagger, lunged at him, and stabbed him in the thigh. Then I yanked the blade out and rolled away to safety. The guy let out a terrible scream, dropped his spear, and grabbed his thigh with both hands. "Please, spare me. I won't do it again. I was just so hungry. I only wanted some food." I didn't listen. I kicked him in the stomach over and over until he started throwing up. Then I stopped. Everyone around us just stood there frozen, too scared to say a word. I picked up my bread from the ground, found a quiet corner, and went back to eating. I glanced at his leg. It wasn't bleeding much. I hadn't stabbed deep on purpose. The whole point was to scare everyone else into leaving me alone. It worked. I heard some chatter behind me. "Huh. Little Nick finally messed with the wrong guy. That kid doesn't hesitate," someone else said. "Hey Hunter, you're friends with Nick, aren't you? Go check on him." The reply came quick. "Don't drag me into this. That idiot brought it on himself." I ignored all of it and waited until Fellier finished recruiting for the day. Fellier had seen the whole fight, but didn't get involved. When he came back, he walked up to the injured guy and said, "You're hurt now. You're no use in a fight. You're fired." Nick begged, "Please, Steward Fellier. It's just a scratch. I can still fight. I've answered your calls many times. Please give me a chance." Fellier didn't even look back. He led the rest of us out of town toward Nightwalker's territory. Along the way, I saw wide fields of rye. The crops looked thin and weak. Farming here was clearly very primitive. After about half an hour of walking, we reached Walker's village. It was surrounded by a simple wooden fence. I counted maybe 100 households. Next to the village was a small estate enclosed by thick logs. Decent defense for this level of society. Nightwalker welcomed us warmly. Every person got a black bread with some cheap cheese spread on top. That alone was worth about 2 copper pennies per person, and there were over 20 of us. This night had money to spend. I bit into mine and found it much better than what I'd bought in town. No weird fillers. Some guys ate so fast they nearly choked. Walker came and addressed us. "Brave warriors, you know why you're here. I won't waste words. You'll be paid every copper you're owed. On top of your daily wage, I'll pay a bonus of 10 copper pennies for every enemy you take down. No limit. Now eat and rest. Tomorrow morning, I'll lead you to teach that bastard Fine a lesson he won't forget." After dinner, I was put up in a farmer's house. The room was bare, just a bed stuffed with straw. Surprisingly, my body didn't mind the rough conditions. I lay down and my thoughts drifted. This was my first night in this world. I felt fear of the unknown and worry about my family back on Earth. I didn't know if my old body had died or if the original boy and I had swapped. I hoped we'd swapped so my parents wouldn't grieve. At least my older brother and younger sister could take care of them. My father was a village doctor, what people called a barefoot doctor. My mother was a nurse. Their influence was why I'd studied medicine in college, though I never found a proper job and ended up helping them at their clinic. I pushed those thoughts away. I couldn't change what happened. All I could do was survive here. Being a mercenary was just a temporary plan. I wanted to save up some starting money, then move to a bigger city where I could use my knowledge from my past life to build a comfortable future. I fell asleep thinking about all this. Early the next morning, Fellier came banging on doors to wake everyone. I was already up and had even washed my face, which earned me disgusted looks from the others. We gathered in formation, though formation was generous. People were joking around and shoving each other like it was a school field trip. Only about a dozen soldiers who looked like Walker's personal guards carried themselves like real fighters. Night Walker rode out on a tall horse with 2 mounted attendants. He frowned at our messy group. One of his attendants shouted, "Look at yourselves. You're mercenaries, not gophers jumping around in a field. Stand together." That got everyone to tighten up a little. Walker shook his head and told Fellier, "Give each of them a black bread for the road. We can't waste any more time. I want that old bastard Fine to have an unforgettable morning." We charged toward the border in a messy mob. Within 20 minutes, we were inside Night Fine's territory. A few serfs working in the fields saw our group of 40 or 50 people and dropped their tools, running for the village. When we reached the village, it was already chaos. Fine climbed the wall of his estate and glared at Walker with pure hatred. But Walker's proud moment lasted about 3 seconds. The mercenaries completely lost control the moment they entered the village. Some chased dogs, others went after chickens. I even saw one disgusting middle-aged mercenary pin a young girl to the ground and start pulling her clothes off. Walker exploded. He ordered his attendant to drag all the mercenaries back and whip the one attacking the girl. Then he noticed me, still standing in place, not moving. "Why aren't you looting with the rest of them?" he asked, surprised. Raiding villages is every mercenary's favorite kind of fight. You get to keep whatever you take. I don't mind the looting. I just can't stand these fools losing discipline during a battle. I bowed respectfully. "Sir, since I accepted your employment, I should follow your orders. Until you give me a mission, I'll stand here and wait." Walker nodded, clearly pleased. "Good. You're a proper warrior. What's your name?" "Feared, sir. I just became a mercenary." He was about to say more when the estate gates suddenly burst open. Night Fine charged out with dozens of soldiers. Walker only had one attendant beside him. "Fall back into the village," he shouted. With Walker organizing us, the scattered mercenaries quickly pulled together. He rallied everyone. "This is it, warriors. Whoever captures Night Fine gets 5 silver coins." The crowd cheered, but as the enemy closed in to about 100 meters, the mercenaries started getting nervous. These weren't trained soldiers. I grabbed my bow and estimated the distance. Even with an arcing shot, my cheap bow couldn't reach that far. I had to wait. But the 4 archers on both sides started trading shots. An arrow whistled past me, and I yanked my pot-lid shield off my back, holding it over my head to cover my vitals. Just in time, a mercenary near me took an arrow in the arm. The mercenaries froze in fear. Walker was furious. "Charge. Move forward, you cowards. Stop acting like women. If you don't advance, I won't pay you a single copper." The threat of losing pay worked. Everyone started creeping forward. Through a gap in my shield, I could see the enemy was split into 2 groups, Fine with his 2 attendants and about 10 trained farm soldiers on one side, and a group of mercenaries like us on the other. At 50 meters I stopped and raised my bow. I aimed at one of the farm soldiers, but then thought better of it. If I hurt one of their real fighters, they'd focus on me, and my skinny body couldn't handle that. So I shifted my aim toward the enemy mercenaries instead. This was my first time pointing an arrow at a real person in either lifetime. My hands were sweating, but this was my job now. I picked a big, burly man and aimed at his thigh. I whispered a silent apology. The arrow flew and hit him right where I aimed. He screamed and crashed to the ground. I crouched down fast to grab another arrow, but I caught 2 enemy archers staring right at me, already reaching for their next shots. I panicked, threw my bow aside, and ducked behind my pot-lid shield, covering as much of my body as I could. 2 arrows slammed into it a second later, making my arm go numb from the impact. I peeked through a crack in the shield. The two sides were now less than 20 meters apart. The enemy archers had put away their bows and switched to close combat weapons. I was angry. I deliberately avoided shooting their trained soldiers, but they'd targeted me anyway. I gritted my teeth, dropped the shield, snatched up my bow, took a quick shot at one of those archers, and let the arrow fly. I didn't even check if it hit. The scream told me enough. I tossed the bow, grabbed my shield again, pulled out my dagger, and braced myself for whatever came next. I peeked through my shield again to check on the battlefield. The two knights, Walker and Fine, along with their attendants, were fighting each other on horseback at the east side of the field. Just 6 men, but with the horses, they were the most terrifying force out there. Nobody dared go near them. The 20 farm soldiers from both sides roared and crashed into each other. But the mercenaries on both sides were a different story. Nobody wanted to make the first move. We just stood there, almost close enough to touch, but too scared to start. Fellier screamed at us in his raspy voice, "Charge, warriors! The knight is watching. I'll report every brave deed, and every coward who just stands around collecting pay." The enemy's steward shouted something similar to their side. I stayed quiet. I'd already taken out 1 mercenary and 1 farm soldier. That was more than enough to earn my 6 copper pennies. Instead of fighting, both sides started hurling insults. One of our mercenaries screamed, "You scum from Nice Town. How dare you stand against the great Night Walker? Come closer, and I'll smash your skulls." Their side fired back, "You dwarfs from Luben. You're just cowardly gophers. Turn around and go home before we send you to meet God." The trash-talking got so loud it drowned out everything else on the battlefield. It seemed like the mercenaries would never actually fight. I turned my attention to the farm soldiers. They were going at it hard. 2 had already fallen, both from Fine's side. Adding the one I'd shot, that was 3 of their soldiers down. Only 7 left, barely holding on. The outcome was basically decided, and I played a key role in that. I thought I could just hide behind my shield until it was all over. But then something unexpected happened. During the shouting match, a young mercenary on the other side lost his temper when someone questioned his manhood. He charged forward with his wooden spear, and that triggered a chain reaction. People started pushing from behind, and suddenly both sides smashed together. Wooden spears aren't sharp, but they can still kill. In the first clash alone, 3 men went down screaming. Once everyone was too close for spears, most dropped them and started wrestling. A few experienced old mercenaries pulled out short clubs and started beating the newcomers senseless. I made a mental note to watch out for those veterans in the future. While I was watching all this from the sideline, an enemy mercenary spotted me and came running over with a wooden spear. He stopped about 10 meters away. "Kit, hand over that bow." I froze for a second. This guy was smart. He must have been watching me since the battle started. I was the only archer among the mercenaries, young and alone. An easy target. I put on a scared voice. "B brother, we're both just here to earn a living. Please don't do this. This bow is everything I own. Can't you let me go?" he sneered. "Don't play games with me, brat. You've got 2 choices. Die, or hand over the bow." I'm not patient. I looked at him through the gap in my shield. He was big and strong. Even though my weapons were better than his, one hit from him could seriously hurt me. I had no armor. I pretended to struggle with the decision. Fine. Come take it then." He paused, surprised I gave in so easily. But he was careful. "Throw it over to me. Once I have it, I'll leave." I dropped the act and yelled back, "No way. If I lean out from behind my shield to throw it, you could stab me before I react. You want it? Come get it yourself." He looked over at the farm soldiers on his side. Only 5 left, barely hanging on. Tom was running out for him. "Fine. Step back and I'll come get it." "Sorry, big brother, first time in battle. My legs are shaking so bad I can't move. But I promise I won't do anything when you come over." Now he realized I was stalling. His face twisted with rage. "You filthy worm. You're playing me." He charged at me with his spear. This was my first real face-to-face fight. My heart was pounding out of my chest, but I knew there was no running. If I gave up the bow, I'd lose my most important weapon, and he'd probably escape after the battle anyway. I bit my tongue hard to stay focused. He rammed his spear straight into my pot-lid shield and shoved me stumbling backward. Then he thrust at my exposed shins. I jumped back. He stabbed again, 3 times in a row. I dodged each one by inches. He was getting furious. His strikes came harder and faster, and he charged at me again. I stared at him hard. When his spear was just inches from my shield, I sidestepped. The spear flew past me. I slammed my shield into his shoulder and drove my dagger into his stomach, then yanked it out fast. He screamed and dropped the spear. Then he grabbed my shield with both hands, trying to rip it away from me. His grip was incredibly strong. My arm felt like it was being torn off. I held on with everything I had and kept stabbing with my right hand. Blood covered the entire shield. I lost count of how many times I stabbed him. Finally, he stopped fighting and collapsed. Blood poured from his mouth. His eyes were full of hatred, locked on me until the very end. My whole body was shaking. I looked at the wounds I'd made, the holes, the exposed insides, and almost threw up. I started to gag, but forced the food back down. I couldn't afford to waste a single bite. After calming down, I looked at the dying man and sighed. We're both just poor guys trying to survive. You could have stayed safe in that crowd of mercenaries with your big body. Nobody would have bothered you. But you got greedy. This is your own fault. I hope you learned something in the next life. He didn't care about my words. He just glared at me until he stopped breathing. I searched his body and found 5 copper pennies. His clothes were in better shape than mine, so I took those too. Turned out, he wasn't wearing anything underneath. I felt a little guilty about that, so I covered him up with some dirt. At least give the dead man some dignity. By then, our farm soldiers had crushed the enemies. 4 of theirs were running away. We'd lost 2, but the remaining 8 didn't chase. Instead, they ran to help Night Walker. The night duel wasn't going well for our side. Walker was getting beaten badly by Fine. One of Walker's attendants had already been knocked off his horse. But when Walker spotted his farm soldiers sprinting toward him, hope returned to his face. The 8 soldiers surrounded one of Fine's mounted attendants with their spears. The rider panicked and tried to dodge, but Walker and his remaining attendant blocked his escape. One soldier found an opening and speared him in the arm, knocking him off his horse. They swarmed him and beat him senseless. Then Walker led the charge after Night Fine himself. Fine looked around. His soldiers were beaten. His mercenaries were losing. There was no hope. He cursed, turned his horse, and ran. Walker chased him, leaving the foot soldiers far behind. I shook my head watching this. What an idiot. He had total advantage, but threw himself into danger chasing one man on horseback. Years of playing competitive games had taught me, never chase when you're winning, especially when you're the main damage dealer. But it wasn't my problem. After killing that big guy, nobody dared bother me anymore. I didn't even hold my shield. I just sat and watched. The mercenary fight had completely fallen apart by now. Most of them had thrown away their weapons and were rolling around on the ground, wrestling and shoving like drunks fighting outside a bar. Only a few experienced veterans were still swinging short clubs at each other. Everything else looked like a schoolyard brawl. The 8 farm soldiers came back after failing to keep up with Walker's horse. They moved toward the mercenary battlefield, and the moment the enemy mercenaries saw them, panic spread instantly. A few older enemy mercenaries exchanged looks and shouted together, "Boys!" Night Fine ran away. "Let's get out of here." That was like pouring water into hot oil. The enemy mercenaries exploded in all directions, running faster than I thought possible. Some unlucky ones couldn't break free from whoever they were wrestling with. Those poor guys got mobbed. I saw one big enemy mercenary surrounded by over a dozen of our men, punching and kicking him. You couldn't even squeeze in to land a hit. Meanwhile, the smart veteran mercenaries quietly slipped away from the crowd and headed straight into the village to start looting for real. I watched those crafty veteran mercenaries carefully. The second they moved toward the village, I dropped my principles and ran even faster than them. But I had no experience with looting. I had no idea where these villagers hid their chickens or grain. I searched and found absolutely nothing. It was embarrassing. Finally, I picked a house with a decent-sized yard and kicked the door. It was blocked from inside. I shouted, "Open up. I won't hurt anyone. I just want money. Open the door, or I'll set fire to it." An old man's voice called back, "Kind warrior, please spare us. I swear we have nothing valuable. If you want riches, go to the house behind mine. That woman Yerlin is rich and mean. She has plenty of good stuff. Nice try, old man." Anyone clever enough to pull that trick definitely had money. I yelled back that I wasn't joking about the fire. Silence. Fine. I grabbed a pile of straw from the yard, put it against the door, sprinkled water on it to make extra smoke, and lit it with my flint. Soon thick smoke was pouring inside. The old man started coughing. He offered me 20 copper pennies. I added more straw. He screamed that he'd die from the smoke. I told him his big fancy yard meant he had to be related to Knight Fine, and if he wanted to choose money over his life, that was his problem. He kept insisting he was innocent. The coughing got worse. Finally, he cracked, said he had 30 copper pennies of his own plus 10 that belonged to his neighbor Yerlin from selling her chickens. All 40, take it and go. I agreed. I didn't want to waste more time. Walker still hadn't come back from chasing Fine, and who knew what might happen next. I scattered the fire. The door opened, and out came a sharp-eyed old man who clearly wasn't as helpless as he sounded. He handed over the 40 copper pennies with a fake smile, begging me to spare his family. I took the money, nodded, and walked out. Right outside, I saw other mercenaries heading toward his house. I felt a little sorry for him. I was the tiger, but the wolves were right behind me. I wondered a bit more, but the remaining houses were all too poor to bother with. So I headed back to the battlefield. Steward Fellier had already cleaned everything up. He'd even collected the 2 arrows I'd shot. I walked up and quietly slipped him 5 copper pennies. He made a show of refusing, then pocketed them with a big grin. Kind Steward Fellier, I said, I only did well today thanks to you. My bow is terrible, though. I noticed you captured 2 bows. Could I buy one? His eyes nearly disappeared into his smile. He laid it all out for me. One of the captured bows belonged to the farm soldier I'd wounded, so I was entitled to 30% of that man's equipment as spoils. The bow was an Imperial military standard issue worth about 5 silver coins new, but since it was used, he'd price it at 3 silver. After subtracting my share, I'd owe 2 silver. The soldier also had a half-body leather armor worth about 3 silver, from which I'd get 1 silver in credit. Plus, I'd earned bounties. 20 copper pennies for the 2 mercenaries I'd taken down, and another 20 for the farm soldier. Adding my daily wage of 6, my total came out to enough that I could get either the bow with 10 arrows or the leather armor for free, but not both. I looked at the leather armor lying on the ground. It wasn't nearly as damaged as Fellier claimed. He was lowballing me on purpose. But between the bow and the armor, I needed the armor more. It was worth more on the open market, too. And since Fellier had already stated his prices out loud, I had him trapped. Steward Fellier, I think I'd rather have the leather armor. Can we trade based on the values you just quoted? His mouth twitched. The clever little fox had caught him, but he couldn't take back what he'd said. He nodded reluctantly. Fine, but don't tell anyone the real price. If anyone asks, you paid 5 silver coins for it. You have my word, Steward Fellier. Not a soul. Fellier picked a medium-quality leather armor from the pile and handed it to me. I noticed he didn't give me the worst one. Those 5 copper pennies I'd slipped him earlier were paying off. I put it on right away, dirt and all. Staying alive mattered more than staying clean. Then I pushed my luck. Steward Fellier, does your lord have extra archers? If not, those captured bows are just gathering dust. Sell me one. I can pay 50 copper pennies now and owe the rest. Next time you need fighters, I'll work off the debt. He liked hearing about money but frowned at the credit part. After thinking it over, probably remembering how I'd fought today, he agreed. Fine, but I charge 4 copper pennies per month as interest until you pay it off. Even a partial month counts as a full one. I didn't hesitate. I was risking my life for a living anyway. What's a little debt on top of that? Right after we finished the deal, Walker appeared on the horizon, wounded, his second attendant missing. And behind him, Knight Fine and his attendant were chasing him, screaming insults. Walker, you coward. You dwarf. Stop running and fight me like a man. I'll beat the crap out of you. Walker's face was purple with rage, but he just kept whipping his horse. I broke into a cold sweat. This idiot had turned a guaranteed win into a disaster. He was like the worst teammate in a video game. Terrible at fighting, but always charging in. The farm soldiers raised their spears to protect their lord. I grabbed my new bow. It was a proper military bow, over 80 pounds of draw weight, far better than my old hunting bow. My weak body could only pull it halfway, but that was still a huge improvement. When they were about 100 meters out, I aimed it fine. But Fellier shouted at me. Feared. You can't shoot a noble. It's against the rules. You'll be severely punished. Even in battles between nobles, you cannot take their lives. I lowered the bow, furious. What kind of stupid rule was that? Just stand here and let nobles kill us? Walker made it back to our lines, but Fine kept circling on horseback. I stared at Fine's attendant riding alongside him. That horse alone had to be worth a fortune. Even a third of the spoils would be serious money. Steward Fellier, can I at least shoot the attendant? I asked. Before he could answer, two of our farm soldier archers started shooting at the attendant anyway. They missed every shot. The rider was weaving too fast for them. That was all the permission I needed. I drew my bow and tracked the attendant's movement, predicting his path. First arrow, missed by inches, skimming past his back. Fine noticed and realized a dangerous archer was targeting them. He pulled his reins to retreat. I knew this was my last chance. I drew again, held my breath, and focused everything on that one shot. The arrow flew. The attendant screamed and fell off his horse. Everyone around me erupted in cheers. Even Fellier stood there with his jaw hanging open. Walker shouted from his horse, "Beautiful shot, boy. I'll reward you handsomely." Fine's face went dark. He stared at his fallen attendant for a long moment, then turned and rode away. I was shaking with excitement. I never expected to actually hit that shot. The battle was over. Walker considered attacking Fine's estate, but saw dozens of women and old men defending the wooden walls. Not worth the trouble with mercenaries who'd desert at the first sign of real resistance. The village peasants had nothing worth taking either. He ordered a retreat. Back at Walker's territory, everyone got paid in full. No tricks this time, probably because we'd won. Walker kept me behind after dismissing the others. My performance had been too impressive to ignore. I'd taken out 4 enemies, including a mounted knight's attendant. The attendant's equipment alone, iron-reinforced leather armor worth about 15 silver used, a single-handed sword worth at least 15 silver, and a riding horse worth 80 silver, nearly 3 gold coins, added up to a small fortune. My 1/3 share came to roughly 40 silver coins. For a commoner, that was real wealth. Walker even invited me to dinner. I accepted, hoping to see how nobles lived. But the whole evening was deeply disappointing. No elegant noble ladies, not even a young woman in sight. Just one gray-haired old maid serving the food. The dinner was the best meal I'd had in this world. White bread, roast chicken, lamb, and a big barrel of ale. Even Walker probably didn't eat like this often. It was all for celebrating the victory. Before we started eating, Walker made me an offer. "Feared, Fellier tells me your archery is outstanding. One of my attendants died in battle today. Would you like to take his place? I'll teach you combat skills, give you a horse and equipment, and pay you 4 silver coins a month. It's steady work, and I'll even try to get you a chance at becoming a noble someday." I was tempted for a moment, but quickly came to my senses. Becoming his attendant meant giving up my freedom. I'd basically be half a serf. And that promise about becoming a noble? Complete nonsense. He was the lowest rank of nobility himself, with nothing but one estate and a village. Plus, with his reckless personality, following him would get me killed sooner or later. I turned him down politely. "Thank you, Sir Walker, but I've been free as a bird my whole life. I'm afraid I couldn't adjust to military discipline. But whenever you need me in battle again, I'll be there." His face dropped, but the loyalty pledge at the end softened him a little. We started eating. He grabbed the roast chicken and tore into it. I did the same. No point being polite when you're starving. We talked and drank, and when it came time to settle up, Walker was feeling generous from the wine. He canceled the debt I owed Fellier for the bow. I seized the moment and asked to buy the fallen attendant's equipment. He agreed. A single-handed sword and iron-reinforced leather armor for just 28 silver coins, 2 silver below market price. He also paid me 12 silver in reward money. I stayed the night and left the next morning. Back in town, I wasn't in a rush anymore. I had decent money now. I rented the cheapest room at the town's only tavern for 1 copper penny a day. For breakfast, I ordered roast chicken and black bread. The chicken looked more like a small bird, less than a pound of meat for 6 copper pennies. Expensive for most people, but I needed to eat meat every meal to build up this weak body as fast as possible. While eating, I listened to the other customers. Most of it was useless gossip. But then one conversation caught my ear. "Did you hear? The Bryan trading caravan got attacked by a pighead tribe near the northern border. Massive losses. A man named Keurig took a big drink. Nothing new. Those greedy merchants risk their lives to avoid paying noble taxes along the main roads. They take the dangerous northern route instead, and sometimes they pay with their lives." Another man shook his head. "It's not greed, Keurig. I tried being a traveling merchant once. Pushed a cart of beans to the Viscount's city thinking I'd make good profit. But after paying every little noble's toll along the way, I would have been better off selling locally. Never did it again. I filed this information away. The attacked caravan sounded like a job opportunity. I spent the next 7 days eating heavily and exercising. My body improved visibly. I was noticeably bigger and stronger. But it cost me 7 silver coins in food alone. My savings were already cut in half. During that week, I learned more about the caravan situation. The Bryan Trading Company was hiring mercenaries from nearby towns. The pay was excellent. 1 silver coin just for joining, plus 1 silver for every pighead warrior killed. On top of that, the caravan master was offering 30% of all recovered loot, divided based on kill count. But according to insiders, the caravan originally had 30 guards and only a handful survived. The pighead tribe was clearly no joke. After a week of recovery, I strapped on my gear and headed to the recruitment station. The caravan worker spotted me from a distance. He didn't even need to ask. My equipment told him everything. He left the boy he'd been talking to mid-sentence and rushed over to greet me. "Warrior, you must be a professional mercenary. My name is Zorn, from the Bryan Trading Company. Are you here to join us against the pighead tribe?" I nodded at Zorn. "I'm interested, but before I commit, I need to know what we're up against and how many fighters you've gathered so far." He frowned slightly. Most mercenaries didn't ask so many questions. But he could tell from my gear that I wasn't ordinary, so he pulled me aside and lowered his voice. "I understand your concerns. The pighead tribe recently migrated into the area. It's a larger small tribe, over 50 warriors, plus around 200 total counting women, children, and elderly. They're tough, but high risk means high reward. I can offer you 2 silver coins just for joining, 50% more than everyone else." He looked at me hopefully, but I wasn't satisfied. He still hadn't answered my key question. "How many fighters have you recruited so far?" His eyes darted around nervously. "Well, we just started. About 40 people across several towns. But we're still recruiting. We're aiming for 200. My face fell. I'd seen mercenary combat firsthand. These people were barely fighters. Most of them couldn't even afford a real weapon. Sending them against beastmen was suicide. Against human nobles, getting captured just meant a beating and being let go. But beastmen would eat you. I told him he should hire a proper mercenary company or ask a minor noble for help. He got anxious and started explaining that the pigheads had also lost about 20 warriors in the initial attack on the caravan, and that the caravan manager planned to hire a knight to lead the assault. The attack was scheduled for 3 days from now. That made me feel slightly better. I told him I'd think about it, but I also made my position clear. "I should warn you, I'm expensive. My equipment matches a knight's attendant. I'm an archer with 4 confirmed kills in battle. So the price is 5 silver coins for the whole operation." His face lit up, then immediately soured at the price. He said it was beyond his authority and asked for my address so the caravan manager could contact me directly. I gave it to him and left. Right outside, I spotted a familiar face. Kevin, the boy from before, watching the recruitment crowd from a distance. I tapped his shoulder. "Hey, good to see you again. Thinking about joining the pighead fight? Maybe we could team up." He jumped, then recognized me. "Oh, it's you. Kind mister." Feared. "No, I'd never join a fight against beastmen. I'm just looking." I waved off the formality. "Just call me Feared. Come on, have you eaten? Lunch is on me." Kevin's face brightened. Then he forced himself to refuse. "I can't eat your food for free. Life is hard enough for both of us." His stomach was growling loud enough for me to hear, but he still had his pride. I respected that. "Don't worry about it," I smiled. "I came into some money recently. 1 meal is nothing. When you're rich someday, you can treat me." He gave in. We went to my tavern, and I ordered roast chicken and a pound of black bread for each of us. Kevin froze when he saw the order, terrified I couldn't pay and would make him work off the debt somehow. I waved it off, small stuff. While we waited for the food, I asked, "Kevin, are you sure you won't consider the pighead mission? The pay is really good this time." He shook his head without hesitation. "Feared, I really won't. I don't even have proper equipment. And honestly, I think you shouldn't go either. You've never fought beastmen before. The old people in my village say wars against other races are completely different. They don't take prisoners. If you lose, almost everyone dies. Our village has lost many people in fights like that." I nodded at Kevin's warning, then casually mentioned I had a spare hunting bow, a half-body leather armor, and a dagger. I'd been planning to recruit a teammate, and if he wasn't interested, I'd ask someone else. His eyes lit up instantly. Are you serious? If that's true, I'll join. The only reason I said no was because I had no weapons. I can't shoot a bow, but the dagger would be enough, I smiled. I knew I'd picked the right person. Then I laid everything out clearly. My goal is to build a real mercenary company. Right now it's just me. With you, we'd be two. I'll be honest, I don't have much money. On days with no fighting, I can only cover 6 copper pennies a day for food. During combat, I'll add 10 more. But all employer fees and loot go to me. I'll put that money toward growing our company. Are you in? Kevin was shaking with excitement. This was an incredible deal compared to what most mercenaries got. A few days of work here and there for barely enough to eat. What I offered was steady, long-term, with equipment included. I'm in, he said. Whatever you need me to do. I held out my hand. Welcome to the Blackwater Mercenary Company. He grabbed it tight. I swear I won't let you down. Captain, I chose Kevin because he had guts. I'd seen him stand up to that recruiter the first day we met. He was also close to my age, smart enough from what I could tell, and young enough to be trained. The food arrived, and we tore into it. Over the next 3 days, we stayed at the tavern together. Money was getting tight, so I cut meat down to once a day. Kevin kept telling me to save more, but I refused. Our bodies were still too weak. We needed protein to become real fighters, especially with a battle coming. I went to the carpenter's shop and paid 1 silver coin for 2 crude shields. The carpenter was so bad at his job that I had to promise not to blame him if they broke before he'd agree to make them. 2 days later, I picked them up. They were rough, but usable. That evening, Zorn the caravan worker came to the tavern. Mr. Feared, the manager approved 4 silver coins for your fee. Our caravan took heavy losses, so that's the best we can do. I accepted, then pointed to Kevin. I also have a new team member. He has basic equipment and a bow. I want his fee to match mine. Zorn looked Kevin over. Kevin straightened up and puffed out his chest. Zorn asked about combat experience. I couldn't lie. Anyone could check. So I said Kevin had been wounded fighting an enemy, which proved his courage. Kevin lowered his head in embarrassment. Zorn shook his head. For someone without kills, the most we'd pay is double the standard rate, 2 silver coins. Go ask your manager, I said. My bottom line is 3 silver for him. If you won't pay it, I'm pulling out of the whole operation. He rushed off and came back within an hour. The manager agreed. We were to leave with the army tomorrow morning. Kevin and I ate dinner early and went to bed. At dawn, we geared up and headed to the meeting point. We were the first ones there. The caravan manager was already waiting with Zorn beside him. He walked up to me with a big smile. You must be the top mercenary Zorn told me about. Let me introduce myself. My name is Brian. I'm the manager of this trading company. You can call me Manager Brian or Uncle Brian, whatever you prefer. I greeted Manager Brian politely and told him I hoped we'd have many opportunities to work together. He seemed curious about me, said I was unusually well-mannered for a mercenary, and looked forward to our cooperation. As more mercenaries arrived, I studied the group. The better-equipped ones all carried iron weapons at minimum, and a few had gear as good as mine. Most wore basic leather armor. These were upper-level mercenaries whose fees were probably at least 2 silver coins each. The 1 silver price was clearly just for the bottom-tier fighters. As time went on, the quality of arrivals dropped sharply. A familiar feeling came over me. Once everyone had gathered, Brian addressed the crowd. He introduced himself, promised to honor every coin of the agreed pay, and even offered his head if he lied. Then he told us to move out while it was still early. I counted about 160 mercenaries as we marched. The group naturally split into 2 crowds. One group of roughly 100 had terrible equipment, sloppy formation, and looked half dead. I even spotted white-haired old men among them. People so desperate they were gambling their lives for a meal. The other group of about 60 was completely different. They had energy, nobody fell behind, and every single one carried an iron weapon. I noticed that anyone without proper gear who tried to drift toward the better group got chased away. Class hierarchy made visible. We marched for over 2 hours before stopping to cook food. I'd been smart enough to buy 2 roast chickens before we left, tearing off bits of meat throughout the march to keep my energy up. I sat down next to Zorn and handed him a chicken leg. How much farther to the tribe? He stuffed it in his mouth gratefully. Another hour or 2. That's why the manager ordered us to stop and eat first. Then I asked the question that had been bothering me. What about the noble who was supposed to help us fight? Where is he? Zorn looked uncomfortable. Unfortunately, even though our manager offered 4 gold coins and promised to pay wages for all the noble's attendants and soldiers, no one accepted. Those so-called nobles abandoned their honor. But don't worry, we have over 160 men. That's more than enough. My stomach sank. This was starting to feel like a scam. I pressed him harder. I'll be honest, I've never fought beastmen before. Does this tribe have cavalry? What's their equipment like? How smart are they? Do they charge in formation? Zorn sighed, but answered everything. The tribe had 3 mounted warriors originally, though one was killed in the first attack. Their metalworking was primitive, only about a dozen iron weapons in the whole tribe. But after wiping out the caravan's guards, they'd captured enough equipment to arm every warrior. On top of that, every pighead fighter wore multiple layers of thick animal hide as armor. It was crude but incredibly effective. That's why the caravan had lost so badly. The good news was that pigheads were far less intelligent than humans. No coordination, no tactics, just mindless charging. That was why Brian thought mercenaries alone could handle it. I was furious. This manager had basically lied to us. He'd made it sound manageable when it was actually extremely dangerous. These pigheads had real weapons now, serious natural armor, and had already destroyed 30 trained guards. And we were going in with a mob of starving peasants. I wanted to quit right there. One wrong move, and I'd be dead. Zorn could see the anger on my face. He knew his side was in the wrong. Mr. Feared, I apologize. This wasn't handled properly, but I'm sure the manager will raise everyone's pay before the battle starts. Consider it compensation. My anger cooled slightly after hearing about the pay raise, but I still wanted to quit. Then I looked at my nearly empty wallet and accepted reality. I had to go through with this. Soon the food was ready. Brian was generous. Everyone got a big chunk of black bread and a bowl of thick porridge. But during the meal, other mercenaries started asking the same questions I had. When they learned no noble was coming to help, their faces turned dark with fury. Brian had to step forward and apologize. He said a knight had originally agreed to fight, but broke his promise at the last minute. To make up for it, he raised everyone's pay by 1 silver coin and changed the loot split from 70 to 30 to 50 to 50, excluding the caravan's original goods and wagons. That calmed most people down. But 8 mercenaries decided to leave, and they were the 8 best-equipped fighters after me. We were down to just over 150. I wrestled with myself for a while, but ultimately decided I had to speak up. My life depended on this battle going well. I walked up to Brian and asked to share my thoughts on the plan. He listened politely. I told him straight. You didn't account for the tribe's women, elderly, and children. This isn't an ambush in the wild. We're attacking their home. Beastmen will fight to the death to defend their families. Even the old and young ones will resist. I leaned in closer. And you know the quality of our mercenaries. If the tribe's civilians charge at us, the weaker mercenaries will break and run. It's what they do. Brian's face went from annoyed to serious as I talked. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Deep down, he knew the danger too. But he explained his situation. The lost cargo was most of his wealth, and he owed money to creditors. If he couldn't recover it, he'd go bankrupt and face serious legal consequences. He had no choice. He forced a big laugh. Don't worry too much. This will be a surprise attack. They won't see us coming. We have great odds. I said nothing. I just turned and looked at the mercenaries behind us, shouting, horsing around, making enough noise to be heard from miles away. Brian followed my gaze and smiled awkwardly. He tried to change the subject by talking about all the livestock we'd capture from the tribe. More pie in the sky. I let him finish his sales pitch, then said calmly, Manager Brian, I understand how important this is to you, but we need to be smart about this. I have some suggestions that might improve our chances. Want to hear them? His eyes brightened. Absolutely. Please, go ahead. I could tell he was barely holding it together. He was a merchant, not a military commander. His original plan had been to let the hired knight lead the battle, but that knight never showed up. I cleared my throat and laid out my plan. We shouldn't attack their village directly. That would mean fighting more enemies while they're fueled by desperation to protect their homes. Honestly, if we charge and head on, our odds are worse than your caravan's first encounter. The tribe's civilians alone could tie up most of our weak mercenaries, and the remaining good fighters would be evenly matched against their warriors, who now have better weapons than before. Brian's expression grew heavier with every word. Instead, I continued, we should set up camp about 10 miles from their village in a hidden spot. Send a few skilled scouts to watch the tribe. When some pigheads come out to hunt or herd animals, we surround them. We engage with a small force, deliberately let a few escape, so they run back and bring out all their warriors. Then we fight the warriors in open ground, on our terms. And we put the experienced mercenaries in front first. The weaker ones join only after the line is holding. I finished my pitch with a warning. If we charge straight in, one rush from those pigheads could shatter our weak mercenaries and trigger a complete collapse. They'd chase us down and kill, or eat, every last one of us. But if we lure the warriors out first, destroy them in the open, then go after the village, our chances go way up. Brian slapped his thigh. Brilliant. Even I can see this as a winning plan. Feared, if we pull this off, you're the hero. I'll make sure you're rewarded beyond your expectations. Actually, why don't you command this whole battle? You're clearly better at this than any petty noble. I played modest. I'm just a small-time mercenary. I don't know that much. But if you're really offering me command, I'm willing to try. He didn't hesitate. It's decided. You're in charge. Kevin had watched the whole conversation with stars in his eyes. I could practically hear him thinking that following me was the smartest decision he'd ever made. First thing I did was have Brian announce some rules. The low-quality mercenaries were forbidden from talking or making unnecessary noise during the march. Anyone caught would lose 5 copper pennies from their pay. Brian also announced that I was now commanding the operation. The weak mercenaries grumbled but kept quiet. The 50 or so elite mercenaries looked at me with open contempt. Being commanded by a teenager didn't sit well with them. But the man paying their bills had spoken, so they held their tongues. I halted the march and walked over to the elite group with Kevin. They were loosely split into 3 groups from 3 different towns, each with its own leader. Brian had told me these leaders were each getting 3 silver coins. I had Brian give each leader an extra silver coin and every regular elite mercenary an extra 5 copper pennies. Brian agreed, wincing at the cost. I stood before the elites and spoke honestly. I know most of you don't respect me. That's fine. We're a temporary force anyway. But I've already secured you extra pay. That's my sincerity. I hope you'll show me yours. And for what it's worth, I plan to build a real mercenary company after this. We might work together again. Most of them smiled at the mention of more money. Even the leaders softened a little. The first leader, a big man named Bruce, spoke up. I appreciate the extra pay, but you look barely 15. Why should we trust your judgment? If your orders are good, I'll follow them. If they're not, I won't. Before I could respond, the second leader, a man named Julian, cut in with a mocking tone. Bruce, you're too naive. This kid clearly smooth-talked Brian into giving him power. Brian's a merchant, not a soldier. We should go tell Brian the truth and expose this brat. I ignored him completely and looked at the third leader. He was an archer like me, not big or tall, but thoughtful. He'd been frowning and thinking the whole time. How old are you? He asked calmly. And what's your actual plan for the battle? If it makes sense, I'll follow your orders. You did get us more money, after all. Julian exploded. Mike, what's wrong with you two? We should go to Brian together and... Bruce had had enough. Julian, shut up. You sound like a screaming gopher. If you have a problem, go talk to Brian yourself. Honestly, this kid seems more reliable than you. I think you're just jealous you didn't get picked. Julian started cursing at Bruce. Mike stepped in to calm everyone down. Enough, both of you. We're all here to make money. Let's hear the kid's plan first. I nodded and kept my cool. If you 3 are willing, I'd like to hold a small private meeting to discuss the attack plan. All 3 agreed immediately. But I noticed the other elite mercenaries watching us with uneasy, suspicious eyes. Leading this group was going to be a headache. Everyone here was only loyal to money. I pulled the 3 leaders aside privately to discuss the details. I didn't want to describe the pighead strength in front of regular mercenaries and destroy morale. I repeated everything I'd told Brian, but with more tactical detail. These men had enough combat experience to understand. As I talked, their expressions shifted from calm to surprised to genuinely shocked. Even Julian's attitude completely changed. Mike spoke first. Have you had noble education? A high-level one. I've met many minor nobles and none of them could analyze a battlefield like you just did. I'm fully in. I'll follow your orders and get my town's mercenaries to do the same. Bruce nodded eagerly. Same here. You've impressed me. Even Julian apologized. Forgive my rudeness earlier. I just couldn't believe someone your age could think like this. I'm with you completely. I laughed it off. I'm no noble. I've just been fascinated by warfare since I was young. And Julian, no hard feelings. I'd have questioned me too, with the 3 leaders on my side. I quickly organized the 53 elite mercenaries. 38 carried iron spears, 10 had swords and shields, and 5 of us, including me, Mike, and Kevin, were archers. Only Mike and I had proper military longbows. The other 3 had weaker hunting bows. I arranged the spearmen into rows of 10 to form a basic spear wall. The swordsmen were grouped together. Nothing fancy, just enough structure to use each type of fighter properly. I even drilled the weaker mercenaries on group charging. We trained until afternoon. Then we marched another hour and made camp about 10 miles from the tribe's location. Everyone ate some bread and slept early. Before dawn the next morning, I woke up and told Brian to keep everyone absolutely quiet. Then I took the 3 leaders and Kevin to scout the tribe. We crawled into some bushes a few hundred meters away. The tribe was camped in a valley surrounded by mountains, with a small river running through it. A perfect settlement. I could see dozens of hide tents spread across the area. Bruce whispered, "What if they don't come out? It's not winter," I said. "They have to hunt and herd. They'll come out." Sure enough, shortly after sunrise, over 20 pighead warriors marched out of the camp. A few were even riding horses. I exchanged looks with the others and sent Kevin running back to bring the main force. The 3 leaders started to stand up, wanting to follow the pighead warriors. I stopped them immediately. "Get down. Plans have changed. 23 warriors just left. That's most of their fighting force. When our army arrives, we attack the village directly. Catch them off guard." Their faces lit up. This was even better than the original plan. Within half an hour, Brian arrived with everyone. I had the weaker mercenaries gather stones as throwing weapons. Since most warriors were gone, there was no need to put the elites in front. We needed speed. I gave the order to advance. The mercenaries started running wildly toward the camp, but I shouted them down immediately. Nobody runs. Walk at a steady pace. If you sprint the whole way, you'll be exhausted when you arrive, just standing there waiting to die. They slowed down. When we were a few hundred meters away, the remaining pighead guards spotted us and blew a bone whistle. The shrill sound echoed through the valley, and the camp erupted in chaos. We kept advancing at a steady pace. The few pighead warriors outside the camp saw how many we were and retreated inside. When I gave the final command, over 100 mercenaries surged into the camp. They pelted the hide tents with stones. Terrified pigheads rushed out and ran straight into a wall of waiting spears. The pigheads fought back fast. Their teenagers grabbed crude weapons and rushed out of the tents. With a few real warriors backing them up, they managed to hold a rough defensive line. I drew my bow and put an arrow through one of their warriors. He dropped instantly. Bruce charged in from the side, swinging his 2-handed greatsword, cutting through the pighead youths like they were nothing. When a few warriors moved to stop him, Julian was right there. He smashed one with his heavy shield, then ran his sword clean through the creature's body. Mike became a ghost, firing arrow after arrow from the shadows. At least 4 teenagers fell to his shots in just minutes. Between my arrows picking off every warrior I could find, their trained fighters were wiped out quickly. That broke the teenagers' spirit. I could see fear creeping into their eyes. I led the 50 elite mercenaries through the camp, hunting down any pighead youth still putting up a fight. But I have to admit, their courage surprised me. Even the youngest ones didn't just stand there waiting to die. They grabbed anything they could use as a weapon and fought back. It made the battle exhausting. Eventually, the mercenaries stopped showing mercy. If it moved, they killed it. After about half an hour, not a single pighead was left standing in the camp. Not even children. My elite squad secured the animal pens. Brian's 4 stolen wagons were right there, untouched. The horses were locked in a corral. I asked the 3 leaders to organize the regular mercenaries, have them collect and hide all the bodies, set the tents back up, and make the camp look normal again. They agreed without hesitation. We got the place looking mostly right in short time, though the bloodstains on the tents wouldn't come out. The loot count was impressive. Besides Brian's recovered cargo, We'd captured 2 small horses, 8 cattle, nearly 200 sheep, about 1,000 pounds of dried meat, 26 cowhides, and 343 sheepskins, though most of those had already been made into tents and clothing, reducing their value. Casualties were light. 0 elite mercenaries killed, only 2 regular mercenaries dead and 5 wounded. Brian was glowing. Feared, "You're incredible. Huge victory. But let's grab everything and retreat before those warriors come back. We can split the loot in town." I shook my head. Absolutely not. When those warriors return and find their tribe slaughtered, they'll chase us in a rage. We'd be slow, weighed down with all this cargo. They'd catch us easily. And even if we made it to town, they'd attack the town or nearby villages, and the local nobles would blame us. I had the camp restored for a reason. We wait here and finish them off when they come back. The 3 leaders backed me up. Brian gave in reluctantly. We ate and waited. Around noon, the Pighead war party finally appeared on the horizon. They noticed nothing wrong. No one had escaped the camp to warn them. The valley's geography had worked in our favor. The surrounding mountains made defense easy, but also meant no one could slip out. The warriors walked right into the camp. The mercenaries hiding behind the tents launched a barrage of stones, sending the pigheads into confusion. Mike and I popped out from behind tents on opposite sides. 2 arrows whistled through the air. 2 warriors took arrows straight to the chest and collapsed. The 50 elite mercenaries swarmed in. Then the pigheads understood. They saw the blood on the tents. They knew their families were gone. A terrible wail rose from the group, and they threw themselves at us with absolute fury. No defense, no self-preservation, just blind rage to kill as many humans as possible. Bruce hacked one down with his great sword, but another pighead leaped onto his back and sank its tusks through his leather armor into his shoulder. Bruce screamed. Julian rushed over and started hacking at the creature's neck with his sword. Even after he'd completely severed the head, the jaws didn't let go. Mike abandoned his bow, too risky with everyone tangled together, grabbed a great sword, and plunged into the melee. I stayed back with my bow, only shooting when I was at least 80% sure I wouldn't hit a friendly. When the moment was right, I shouted, "All regular mercenaries, charge!" They'd been itching for it. They screamed and rushed in. Working in groups, they'd grab and hold a pighead warrior while an elite moved in to deliver the killing blow. Before long, every last pighead warrior was dead. But the cost was steep. 2 elite mercenaries killed, for seriously wounded. 6 regular mercenaries dead, and 10 more hurt. Far worse than the first round. Those warriors had real equipment now and fought with nothing to lose. The captured gear was impressive, but most of it belonged to Brian's original cargo. All I could do was stare. 3 horses, though, belonged to everyone and would be split as agreed. We marched back to town, arriving near dusk. Everyone immediately started dividing the spoils. Brian proposed that I receive 1 horse and 100 pounds of dried meat as a bonus for my tactics before the regular split. Nobody dared argue. I was the hero of the day. Everyone walked away with a decent haul. After the crowd left, Brian invited me to dinner. We sat in a corner of the tavern with some food and a barrel of ale. "This wouldn't have been possible without you," he said. "You killed 5 enemies personally. With your base fee, that's 10 silver coins. But the caravan wants to pay you a full gold coin, 30 silver, as thanks." I thanked him. He then made me an offer. Join his caravan as head of security, 20 silver coins a month, steady work. He mentioned he'd be opening new trade routes, which could be dangerous. I turned him down without hesitation. "I'm building my own mercenary company. But if you need help, hire me for individual jobs. Better for both of us." He accepted it. Then I asked him something that had been on my mind. "You've traveled a lot. Have you ever heard of a commoner becoming a noble?" Brian chewed thoughtfully. "Not in recent memory. Maybe decades ago, during the Great War against the Beastmen, some commoners got elevated. But now, the whole northern region of the Amon Kingdom is falling apart. Small nobles ignore orders from barons. Barons with castles refuse commands from anyone above them. The system collapsed after that war weakened the high nobility so badly they couldn't control the lower ranks anymore. In the south, knights are dirt poor and barons barely richer. Here in the north, some knights are as powerful as barons. In a place like this, a commoner becoming noble is nearly impossible. If that's your dream, I'd suggest going south, but I'd stopped listening after he mentioned one word. What are transcendents? Brian took a long drink and smiled. Transcendents are individuals with abilities beyond normal humans. There are two types, warriors and mages. Thousands of years ago, when the world's magical energy dried up, only the most gifted people could become transcendents. Warriors are more common. Mages are extremely rare. Only royal families or great noble houses have them. Even warrior transcendents only appear among mid-level nobility, because training requires magic stones. A single stone costs hundreds or even thousands of gold coins. Unless you're born with extraordinary natural talent, you need those stones. My eyes went wide. How do you know so much about this? His gaze grew distant. Because I was born into a noble family. I won't say which one. Growing up, I had access to this kind of information. I dreamed of becoming a transcendent myself. But I wasn't the heir, so when I came of age, they gave me some money and kicked me out. I spent most of it tracking down an underground black market run by a transcendent. Paid a mage to examine me. The result? I had zero talent. I was devastated. Eventually I accepted it, got married, started a family, and became a merchant to survive. That was almost 20 years ago. I felt a pang of guilt. I'm sorry for bringing up painful memories. I shouldn't have pride. Brian waved it off. Don't worry about it. The fact that you got me talking about this stuff says something about you. You're a remarkable young man. My years in business have given me a sharp eye for people, and I can tell you're going places. You have an incredible instinct for warfare. Stick with it. I thanked him and asked if the place where he'd been tested for talent still existed. He gave me a knowing smile. I figured you'd ask. It's in the kingdom's capital, about 2 weeks' journey from here. But it's an underground black market operation, and a single test costs 50 gold coins. That kind of money would be better spent building your mercenary company. Get stronger first, test later. My excitement died halfway. I dropped the subject and started asking about the political situation, geography, and general knowledge of the region. Brian answered everything openly. I soaked it all up like a sponge. Even basic information like this was beyond what any ordinary commoner would know. We kept drinking and talking until we were both pretty drunk. I asked him about magical beasts, and he told me he'd once seen one, a wolf the size of a calf, about 15 years ago. Luckily, it had just eaten and wasn't interested in his group. When Brian could barely keep his eyes open, I helped him to his room and tucked him in. As I turned to leave, he called out, "Feared, since you're so interested in the extraordinary, I've got some books I've collected over the years about magic. With magic energy dried up in the world, they're not worth much. I'll give them to you. The most valuable are 2 cultivation methods, a warrior body tempering technique and a universal meditation method. But don't touch the warrior one unless you have magic stones or items with magical energy. It'll make a normal person cough blood. You need warrior talent plus magical items to actually grow stronger. Without talent, the magic items would just be wasted. The meditation method, though, you can try that anytime. I've memorized it. It's useless for me, but it's good for clearing your mind." I was thrilled. "How much do you want for them?" "I can't just take these for free," he frowned. "They're worthless trinkets I picked up cheap from various towns over the years. I used to buy anything related to this stuff whenever I found it at a reasonable price. But I'm old now. Those dreams faded years ago. Take everything. Just don't waste too much time on it once the novelty wears off." I was genuinely moved. "Then I owe you a favor. Anything you need from me in the future, just ask." That was exactly what he wanted to hear. Between brothers, no need for formalities. And I won't be shy about asking when the time comes. I realized I couldn't read this world's writing, so I had Brian explain the parchments to me before he passed out. The meditation method wasn't complicated, and I quickly grasped the basics. I rushed back to my room, but stopped at Kevin's door first. He stood up, saluted, and handed me 11 silver coins, his 3 silver base pay, 2 silver in kill bounties, and 6 silver from his share of the loot, converted to coins by Brian. I took the money without pretending otherwise. Then I pulled 1 coin back out and pushed it into his hand. "Send this home to your family tomorrow." He refused stubbornly. "Captain, we only fought for 2 days. You only owe me 20 copper pennies by our agreement. And I don't even want those. The meals you've been feeding me are worth way more than 6 copper a day. We should save everything for building the company. I know you'll take care of me when the time comes." I shoved the coin into his hand. You've been gone for days without bringing your family anything. That's not right. As for the food, 6 copper was the minimum. Our bodies are weak and need meat to get stronger. I also got us 100 pounds of dried meat from Brian, so we're set for a while. Don't worry about the company. I have plans. He finally gave in and pocketed the coin. It was more money than he'd ever earned at once. He looked like he still couldn't believe any of this was real. Back in my room, I couldn't wait any longer. I sat down and started the breathing exercises Brian had taught me. The moment I closed my eyes, I felt like I'd become a giant vacuum. Air rushed toward my body from all directions. I could feel the air currents around me and tiny specks of light drilling into my skin. This had to be magic energy, but there was barely any of it. Even with my body pulling so hard, I could only catch a tiny amount. Still, this meant one thing for certain. My magical talent was extremely high, terrifyingly high. Maybe it had something to do with my soul merging with the original fears. I meditated through the night and woke up the next morning feeling incredibly refreshed. I went downstairs for breakfast and found all 3 leaders, Bruce, Julian, and Mike, still at the tavern. They greeted me warmly. Julian said he was heading home after breakfast. Thanks to you, I earned enough to feed my whole family this year. I waved it off. Bruce insisted on paying for my breakfast. I refused and offered to pay for everyone. We argued until we all just paid for ourselves. Then Mike brought up the question I'd been waiting for. Didn't you mention wanting to start a mercenary company? This was my moment. I nodded and launched into my pitch. We mercenaries are just commoners who can barely survive. Nobody with money would risk their life like this. Without strength or connections, we get cheated by employers, underpaid, sent on suicide missions. So I'm building a company that actually protects its members. I'll handle negotiations with employers, screen dangerous jobs, organize training, and take care of fallen soldiers' families. Eventually, I want to create a death benefit fund, using company money to pay the families of anyone killed in action. The 3 of them stared at me with their mouths hanging open. This was their dream workplace. It was basically this world's version of health insurance, paid vacation, and workers' compensation. Of course, I was doing exactly what a boss from my old world would do, painting a beautiful future without mentioning actual salary. Not because I was greedy, but because I was genuinely broke. All I had was words. And these men had never been exposed to motivational speakers from my previous life. They had zero resistance. Bruce nearly jumped out of his seat. Is this real? Can I join? I don't need much, just food and enough for a drink now and then. Julian was excited too, but more practical. I have a wife and 2 kids. I need at least 20 silver coins a year to support them. My family can handle the farm while I'm away. If you can meet that condition, I'm yours. Mike simply nodded. Count me in. Just feed me. I want to fight for this goal. Kevin came downstairs just then. I pointed at him. This is my first recruit. Here's his deal. Minimum 6 copper pennies per day for food, adjusted up based on our finances, but probably no higher than 10 for now. During missions, everyone gets an extra 10 copper pennies daily. These terms are experimental since we're just starting out. Once we have steady income, I'll add a base salary for everyone. Bruce loved it. This is perfect for me. I'm in. And I'll go back to my town and recruit more people. Julian hesitated. Could you give me the food allowance as cash instead? I'd buy cheaper food and send the savings home to my family. I shook my head firmly. Sorry, but no. There's a reason I'm spending on food instead of paying salaries. I need every fighter's body to get stronger as fast as possible. That only happens with proper nutrition. Once we're established and have real funding, I'll keep improving our standards. Julian's face fell. I'll probably regret this forever. But with a family to feed, I just can't take the risk. He went back to chewing his black bread in silence. I sighed internally. This was the downside of having no land. If I had territory, I could settle their families on it. Instead, all I could offer were dreams and promises, fragile things built on trust that could shatter with a few broken commitments. I comforted him anyway. Don't feel bad, Julian. We fought together, and that makes us brothers regardless. When the company can afford land to settle members' families, I'll come find you first. And whenever we get a big job, you'll always be invited. That cheered him up a little. Mike's eyes were burning with determination. I was already sick of living like this. I was planning to find a proper mercenary company in a bigger city. Meeting you feels like fate. Your terms are better than I expected. And being part of something from the very beginning, that sounds exciting. When this company grows, I'll be one of the founding members, he laughed. I grinned. Lucky day for the Blackwater Mercenary Company. 2 new members at once. Welcome aboard. You're now my closest comrades. Go back to your towns and ask around. I can afford to recruit up to 10 people right now. Any more, and I'll go broke. Then Mike pulled out a money bag and set it beside me. Captain, this is my savings from years of mercenary work, plus some money my father gave me. It's not a fortune, but it should help recruit a few more. Through the opening I could see silver coins and gold ones. I almost choked. I just recruited a rich kid. How was I supposed to be the boss now? I desperately wanted that money, but I forced myself to refuse. That's your personal property. I can't take it. But if we ever truly can't feed ourselves, I'll consider borrowing from you. Mike shook his head coolly. Just hold on to it. No interest. Consider it a loan. I believe in your abilities. Don't disappoint me, Captain. I struggled with myself for a long time, then picked up the bag. Fine, but I'm recording this as a loan with monthly interest. When the company has enough reserves, I'll pay you back in full. If you refuse the interest, I won't touch the money at all, he agreed reluctantly, adding just one condition. When we build up our forces, I want to be the first cavalryman. I nodded immediately. That also meant he could ride. A bonus. Bruce awkwardly pulled out 15 silver coins. I don't have as much as Mike. This is just yesterday's pay. I spend money as fast as I earn it. Consider it my investment in the company. I smiled and pushed most of it back. Keep it. Mike can afford to lend because he doesn't drink. You're different. Enjoy a few cups in the evening. Just remember, no drinking during the day. That's a company rule. I took only 2 silver and stuffed the rest back into his pack. Anyone from my old world watching this scene would have thought it was a pyramid scheme. No salary, and the employees are paying the boss. Classic. After breakfast, Mike and Bruce headed back to their towns to recruit. Julian left with his group, looking glum. My offer wasn't impressive enough for top mercenaries, but for the desperate ones, the ones whose biggest dream was just eating regularly. It was a miracle. Mike and Bruce filled all 20 spots quickly. Every recruit was someone they personally trusted, with decent courage and character. Most were experienced fighters with basic iron weapons, and nearly all were single with no families. The Blackwater Mercenary Company finally had real shape. 24 members total. Mike's bag contained 2 gold coins and 40 silver, roughly 100 silver total. Combined with my 40 silver, the company had about 140 silver coins. It sounded like a lot, but feeding 24 people and 1 horse would eat through it fast. I did the math. My 100 pounds of dried meat, at 1/3 of a pound per person daily, would last about 14 days. During that time, I'd only need to buy black bread, about 4 copper pennies per person per day. After the meat ran out, I need to buy more, bringing costs to 7 or 8 copper per person daily. At that rate, our money would last roughly 1 month. 1 month. That was my window to find the next source of income. Our first job came quickly. Brian needed us to escort his cargo to Monarch City, the Count's capital and the northernmost frontier of the Empire. Beyond it lay Beastman territory. 5 days of travel, for gold coins for the job. I accepted without hesitation. Brian also suggested I buy poultry to sell in Monarch for a small profit. I bought 100 chickens at 4 copper pennies each, 13 silver total. I also stocked up on black bread and had a seamstress in town make us a banner. An army needs ceremony, even a ragged one like ours. We set out in formation. Brian drove his wagons at the rear. Bruce and I guarded the middle. Mike rode our only horse up front as a scout. The whole thing looked ridiculous, soldiers carrying supplies on their backs with live chickens dangling from their necks. We looked less like a mercenary company and more like bandits returning from a raid. I instantly regretted the chicken idea. Brian told me his cargo was mostly processed cowhide and dried meat from the western grasslands. Normally this route earned about 20 gold coins profit, but after the pighead disaster, he'd already lost everything. We marched until nearly noon before stopping to cook. I sat down to sharpen my sword. Then Kevin came running back in a panic. Captain, we found a jackal man while gathering firewood. He spotted us and ran. Mike is chasing him. I jumped up. Seriously? Beastman again? I found Brian and told him. His face turned grim. I've walked this route every year. Never seen Beastman tribes here before, just a few goblins. That pighead tribe wasn't a coincidence. Something's changing, I agreed. Half a day's travel, and we'd already run into jackalmen. This trip was going to be rough. Brian asked what we should do. I suggested selling the goods at a closer city instead. He shook his head miserably. Every trade route is strictly controlled. I paid a fortune for rights to this one. If we go to another city without a permit, the local nobles will confiscate everything, or worse. No choice then. We had to push forward. I proposed the mercenary company scout ahead first, and Brian follow with the wagons only after we confirmed each stretch was safe. He agreed and raised our pay to 6 gold coins. After this trip, I'm done with trading, he said. The world's getting too dangerous. I'll buy a shop in some city and live quietly. My ears perked up. Are you selling the business? The trade route, he laughed bitterly. I paid 50 gold coins for this route's permit. Now with beastmen everywhere, I couldn't get half that. And if I tell buyers about the beastmen, nobody will touch it. If I don't tell them, they'll come after me later. I took a deep breath and made my pitch. What about selling to me? I can't pay now, but I'll give you a good price over time with interest. I'll buy the route too. He gave me a foxy grin. Nice try, little brother. But you're broke and in a high-risk profession. I can't take that gamble, even for a friend. Tell you what, though, I'll give you my trade route permit to try a few runs. Once you've built up real capital, we'll talk about the rest. That was more than I expected. I thanked him eagerly. Over an hour later, Mike finally rode back, carrying a jackalman's severed head. Captain, about 10 miles from here there's a small jackalman tribe. Around 160 total, maybe 40 warriors. We can't take them. I killed the one who spotted us, but this area isn't safe. I recommend we move through as fast as possible. I nodded and gave the order to keep moving. Everyone got a pound of black bread and some dried meat to eat while walking. We crept through the area for several more hours. Then Bruce came running back, shouting before he even reached me. Captain, we must be cursed. We found another pighead man. Luckily, the boys reacted fast and stabbed him to death on the spot. I was going numb. Had we wandered into beastman territory? I ran to Brian and tossed the pighead's head at his feet. Brother Brian, this area might be overrun. That's 2 tribes in half a day. If we keep going like this, we'll run into a real fight. And we don't have the numbers. Brian was rattled, but after a long pause he gritted his teeth. I have to reach Monarch City no matter what. These goods are for a powerful man there. If I don't deliver, I'm finished. And going through human territory isn't an option. The tolls are bad enough. But some nobles out there are desperate enough to rob us and kill everyone to cover it up. He raised my pay to 8 gold coins total. I was quiet for a while. Honestly, if I didn't owe you a favor, I'd never do this. I'm not just risking my life. I'm responsible for every man in my company. But fine, I'll gamble with you one more time. New plan. We travel only at night and hide during the day. Brian agreed to follow my lead completely. I pulled the caravan back to avoid the pighead tribe, found a hidden spot, and had everyone rest until dark. When night fell, we discovered a new problem. Most of my men couldn't see in the dark. Classic night blindness from vitamin deficiency. Only 5 of us had decent night vision. I split them into 2 groups, 2 out front guiding the way, 3 in back sweeping our wagon tracks with branches so beastmen couldn't follow us. The only sounds were the soft brushing of branches and the occasional thud of someone tripping in the dark. We marched until dawn, then hid and slept. This became our routine for 5 days. But we'd only covered 2/3 of the distance, still needed another day and a half. Along the way I spotted over a dozen small tribes, and even one medium-sized one. Thankfully we stayed far enough away. Everyone was filthy and mentally drained. A few men asked to leave the company. I told them they could quit once we reached the city. We marched one more night. Half a day from our destination, it finally happened. We'd found a hillside to rest on during the day. Around noon, the sentry screamed, "Beastmen! Beastmen!" I grabbed my bow and scanned the area. A few hundred meters away, about 50 dog-headed creatures were creeping toward us. My heart sank. We couldn't avoid it this time. I called the sentry back, and everyone grabbed their weapons. Our campsite on the hillside gave us some height advantage, but they had the numbers. It was roughly even. Shield men up front, spearmen behind them. Archers, fire at will when they're in range. Mike, ride around the flanks, hit them where you can, but don't get killed. Mike nodded and galloped out wide. The dogheads started their charge at about 200 meters. They came in a dense pack. If I'd had more archers, I could have wiped them out without any melee at all. I started shooting at 100 meters. No need to aim carefully with that crowd. Arrow after arrow, my hands became a blur. In the time it took them to close the distance, I fired 10 shots. At least 8 dogheads dropped. But my fingers were bleeding from the bowstring, and my arms were completely dead. The other archers were spent too. About 35 dogheads remained. At 30 meters they hurled javelins uphill at us, but the slope killed most of the force. Only one of my men took a hit in the thigh. Then they crashed into our line. At the last second, I shouted, "Shield men, charge!" My shield bearers roared and slammed forward, smashing their shields into the front rank of dogheads. The creatures stumbled backward. Behind the shields, my spearmen thrust through the gaps, skewering the front runners. Dogheads screamed and tumbled down the hillside. That single clash killed at least 10 more. The remaining 20-something dogheads instantly broke. They dropped their weapons and ran. I was stunned. I'd been bracing for a brutal fight against war dogs, but these were more like scared puppies. I grabbed my sword and shield and screamed, "Kill them all. Don't let a single one escape." My men charged after the fleeing dogheads. These creatures were small and slow. We caught and killed every last one within 15 minutes, keeping just a few alive to lead us back to their camp. We followed them to their tribe and attacked without hesitation. It was over quickly. The whole small tribe was wiped out. I felt uneasy afterward. If it had been pigheads or jackal men who'd found us instead of these weak dogheads, things could have gone very differently. They'd probably tracked us by smell. We hadn't left many visible traces. The loot was pitiful compared to the pighead tribe. 3 cattle, about 70 sheep, 300 pounds of dried meat, 18 cowhides, and 150 sheepskins. For a tribe of over 200, they were dirt poor. Even beastmen had rich and poor, apparently. Brian gave me everything without hesitation. I made a show of refusing, then took it all. I told him we needed to move immediately. The smell of blood might attract other tribes. We were close to Monarch City now, and beastman density should be thinning out. We marched for several more hours. Almost there. Then Mike came galloping back at full speed. My stomach dropped. "Captain, up ahead, a group of humans is surrounded by beastmen. They're losing. Won't last much longer." I exhaled slightly. At least it wasn't aimed at us. "How many on each side? What kind of beastmen? Can you tell who the humans are? They've been fighting a while, bodies everywhere." "About 100 jackal men left. The humans have maybe 50, with excellent equipment. Half are wearing iron half-plate armor. Some are in full plate, definitely high-ranking nobles. Looks like a major lord's personal guard." I was curious, but reminded myself I was under contract. I turned to Brian. "What do you think? They're clearly important. We're only hours from the city. Do we help or keep going?" Brian collapsed to the ground. "We're doomed. Anyone with that many armored guards and full-plate armor is at least a baron, probably a viscount or higher. If a noble like that dies, and we were nearby, and didn't help, the kingdom's law will strip us of our commoner status. My trip really is cursed," I groaned. I'd only been thinking about watching the show, not actually fighting. But Brian was right. We'd be easy to trace as the only caravan on this route. I made a decision. "Brian, listen. The city's close. I'll send Mike to escort you there. He can scout ahead on horseback. If my rescue fails, at least you're safe. Consider it repayment for everything you've done for me." Brian's eyes watered. "I'm not a coward. I just can't swing a sword anymore. I'd only be in your way." He paused. "That business deal you proposed earlier? I accept. We'll sign the papers in Monarch City. And take the armor from my wagon. 4 sets of iron-reinforced leather and over 20 regular leather pieces. I bought them for my guards. They might help keep your men alive." I hadn't expected that bonus. I thanked him and called Mike over. Mike resisted. He wanted to fight, but I talked him into it. Brian pressed 10 gold coins into my hand. "Your full pay? Take it. If things go bad, just run. I have connections. I can get you out of the country." I shook my head firmly. "I'm not running. If I abandon my men, what kind of leader am I? Keep the money for now. If I come back, I'll collect it then. If I don't, give it to my soldiers' families." Brian tried to speak several times, couldn't find words, and finally just nodded heavily before driving away. I watched the caravan disappear, then ordered everyone to put on Brian's armor. We rushed toward the battlefield. The situation was grim. The humans were down to 42 fighters. The jackal men still had 84. The human cavalry had 4 riders left against 7 jackal man mounted warriors. Blood soaked the ground. Bodies lay everywhere. Wounded men screamed. I could feel it. Both sides were completely exhausted. I led my company forward at a steady pace. When we appeared, everyone on the battlefield froze. Humans and jackal men alike stopped fighting and stared at us. I led my men within 100 meters and started firing into the beastmen. 6 jackal men dropped before I ran out of arrows. I drew my sword, grabbed my shield, and screamed, "Kill them all." 1 silver coin bonus for every beastman you take down. My mercenaries went wild. The human soldiers on the battlefield saw us, and their morale surged. The jackal men tried to fight back, but they were exhausted. I stayed close to Bruce, covering him with my shield while he swung his great sword like a battering ram. A jackal man with his own greatsword charged at Bruce. Before I could react, Bruce was already swinging. The jackal man blocked, but he had nothing left in the tank. The impact sent him stumbling backward. I darted in and stabbed him deep in the thigh, hit an artery. He tried to bite me, but I bashed him with my shield and knocked him flat. He kept trying to stand but couldn't. I left him bleeding out and ran back to cover Bruce. Against these exhausted jackal men, even my newest recruits fought like veterans. Within minutes, both our forces had them in full retreat. Their leader howled in frustration. If we'd arrived just a little later, he would have wiped out these humans completely. He called the retreat. I wasn't about to let them go. Normally, I'd never chase jackal men, but these were spent and thinking only of escape. We ran them down quickly. Only 5 cavalry escaped. We killed 32 jackal men total, losing 2 of our own with 5 seriously wounded. The loot was incredible. These were battle-hardened jackal men with serious equipment, mostly captured from humans. 3 sets of half-body iron armor, 21 iron-reinforced leather pieces, 8 double-layer leather suits, plus swords, axes, spears, shields, and 6 military longbows. The 3 iron armor sets alone were worth over 4 gold coins each used. This one fight more than paid for every risk I'd taken. A tall, middle-aged man approached me. "Warrior, tell me your name." "I'm Carl, a mid-level officer of the kingdom's 2nd Legion. My rank is Honorary Baron. Thank you for saving us. I'll report this and get you a reward." I bowed quickly. "Baron Carl, my name is Feared. I'm a mercenary escorting a trading caravan. We happened to pass by and saw the battle." He clapped my shoulder. "You're a true warrior. Without you, my entire squad would have been wiped out." I hesitated awkwardly, then asked, "Would it be all right if we kept the equipment from the jackal men we killed?" Carl laughed. "Of course. You earned it with your lives. And to thank you properly, I'll give you some weapons too." I nearly lost my composure. "Thank you for your generosity, Baron." His soldiers were still sitting on the ground recovering, completely drained. My men started collecting our spoils while we waited. Carl gave me 2 sets of half-body iron armor from enemies he'd personally killed. He apologized for not giving more, saying the rest belonged to his soldiers. I made a polite show of refusing, then took them gladly. You can't always buy equipment this good, even with money. "Were you out here specifically hunting beastmen?" I asked. Carl shook his head. "No, this was unexpected. We were scouting around Monarch City on the Count's orders when we ran into a 300-strong beastman force. They outnumbered us by 100. We nearly didn't make it." I frowned. "Carl, what's going on?" "I spotted over a dozen beastman tribes on my way here. The caravan master said this is completely abnormal." Carl checked that no soldiers were within earshot, then said quietly, "You're right to be worried. If nothing changes, there'll be a major war with the beastmen within the next few years. We've had peace for a long time, but that's ending. If you don't have urgent business, I'd stay close to the city and stop wandering around." When Carl mentioned a coming war, my eyes lit up. This was my chance. In every era, fortunes are made during chaos. Only a major war could reshuffle the deck and give a commoner like me a real shot at rising. Otherwise, I'd be a mercenary captain forever. Carl and I talked the whole way. Within a couple of hours, we reached Monarch City. It was smaller than I'd imagined, more of a military fortress than a real city. Thick walls, a moat, and lots of defensive towers. Outside the walls, though, a bustling outer city had grown up with plenty of residents and businesses. Carl said goodbye and left me his military camp address in case I ever needed him. I found a tavern in the outer city for my men. I handed Bruce 20 silver coins and told him to pay off the mercenaries who wanted to leave, then keep everyone else in line. This isn't our backwater town, I warned him. One wrong move could offend someone powerful, and we have no connections to protect us. Bruce nodded firmly. Anyone who acts up answers to me. I headed into the inner city to find Brian. The moment I stepped through the gates, a horrible stench nearly knocked me over. The streets were covered in human waste. So much for high society. The locals seemed completely used to it. I found Brian at the address he'd given me. He nearly cried with relief when he saw me alive. I told him everything went smoothly and mentioned the soldiers belonged to the kingdom's legion, not some noble's private army. War with the beastmen was likely coming. Brian frowned briefly, then shrugged. Doesn't matter to me. I'm done with this business. But are you still interested? No hesitation. This is my fastest path to building real capital. Please, brother. He studied me for a long time, then sighed and laid everything out. The trade route ran between Monarch City and Dova City. Heading to Monarch, you transported special high-quality leather for making premium armor. On the way to Dova, you'd stop in Derby City to buy cheap beans, then sell them at high prices in Dova where livestock was plentiful but grain was scarce. Profit margins ranged from 30% to occasionally double, though the leather was the real money. He explained the logistics. 4 draft horses eating 45 pounds of feed each per day, meaning one whole wagon just carried horse food. Resupply at Derby City Midway. Then he named his price. 50 gold coins for the 4 wagons, for horses, and the trade route permit. 10% annual interest, but if I paid within a year, no interest at all. I could tell he was being incredibly generous. 10% interest was nothing in a world where my profession could get me killed any day. The route permit alone had cost him 50 gold originally, and he was including it for just 18 gold. Brother Brian, I'll pay you back within a year, 60 gold coins total. Please don't refuse. It's the least I can do. His eyes crinkled into happy slits. He made a token protest, then agreed. He also recommended I hire his crew, especially Zorn, who knew every step of the trade process. Their previous salary was 2 silver coins monthly plus basic food. I agreed to keep Zorn on as my deputy trade manager at the same salary, but with better meals. Real meat every day. Then Brian pulled out a money bag and handed it to me. Your livestock from the Doghead tribe sold for 18 gold coins, plus your 10 gold fee. 28 gold total. Honestly, with all these beastmen around, maybe you should forget trading and just raid beastman tribes for a living. I stared at the gold coins. The livestock had been worth far more than I'd expected. But I shook my head at Brian's suggestion to just raid beastman tribes full-time. I don't have territory, brother. Living in a big city would eat through my money with the high prices. Settling in a small town would make local nobles nervous. Raiding tribes means casualties, and recruiting replacements means traveling everywhere. Running a trading caravan is the smartest move for now. And most beastman tribes aren't as weak as those dogheads. Pigheads and jackalmen would crush me. Maybe raiding tribes will be my next step once I'm stronger, Brian agreed. We signed a contract. Then, to my complete confusion, a woman and a small boy walked in. Brian rolled up his sleeves, pulled out a whip, and started beating the kid. The boy screamed and cried his eyes out. After a while, Brian stopped, handed the mother 2 silver coins, and smiled at the sobbing child. Remember this day, boy. Today I signed a debt agreement with Feared. If you don't think you'll remember, I can give you another round. The kid nodded frantically through his tears, swearing he'd never forget. I stood there stunned. So this was how contracts were witnessed in this world. You beat a child so he'd remember the deal for life. Brian and I ate dinner together and talked until evening. He planned to travel with my caravan as far as Derby City, where his family lived. He'd settled down there permanently, and I could find him anytime. The next morning, I went to a carpenter's workshop in the city and ordered 180 javelin shafts, thumb thick. I also had them build 60 spear-throwing devices based on something I remembered from my past life, atlatls, like the ones ancient people used. Simple to make, they extended throwing range and power dramatically. I'd considered crossbows, but they were restricted weapons. Slings needed too much training. The atlatl was the best option, highest damage output among simple weapons, though the range was only about 50 meters with an effective killing distance of 30. I had them add goose feathers to the back of each javelin for stability, just like arrow fletching. After haggling, the javelins came to 6 copper pennies each and the throwers 10 copper each. I left a gold coin deposit, then visited the blacksmith to order 180 special javelin heads, somewhere between a spear point and an arrowhead. After negotiating from 10 down to 8 copper each, I paid 8 silver as deposit. Everything would be ready in 2 days. Total cost, just over 100 silver. Back at the tavern outside the city, the quitting mercenaries had already left. 2 badly wounded men couldn't travel anymore. I paid everyone their wages, 40 copper per regular soldier, 50 for the lightly wounded, 2 silver for the seriously hurt, and 5 silver in death benefits for families of the fallen. The total came to about 70 silver. I sent Bruce and Mike back to their hometowns to deliver the money to the families. With departures and casualties, my company was down to 17, including me. I reworked the pay structure. Instead of paying only during missions, I switched to a monthly salary. 2 silver coins per soldier on top of meals costing at least 6 copper pennies per day. That meant each soldier cost me about 8 silver per month. I ran the numbers. Brian said this trade route could handle 3 round trips every 2 months. Each trip grossed roughly 30 to 40 gold coins. Brian had previously spent about 12 gold monthly maintaining a 30-man mercenary escort plus staff. I only planned to run 1 trip per month. The rest of the time I'd train my soldiers, which was my Real foundation. 6 horses, 4 draft, and 2 scout would cost at least 5 gold monthly in feed alone. After all expenses, each trip would net me about 20 gold coins under ideal conditions. That could sustain a 70-man company, but factoring in unexpected costs, I capped my target at 60 men. As for repaying Brian's 50 gold, I'd earned that through side jobs, hunting small beastman tribes for bounties and loot. Trying to pay him back from trading profits alone would take forever. 2 days later, all the equipment was ready. I loaded up a wagon with horse feed, and we set out. Since we had no cargo yet, we traveled through human towns on the way out. At every stop, I recruited mercenaries, specifically quiet, obedient, strong types. By the time we passed through my old town of Luben, we were up to 47 people, including 3 caravan workers I'd folded into the company. Then we swung by the neighboring town to find Julian. His face lit up when he saw us. Feared. Already this many men? I smiled and told him I'd revised the company rules. Now everyone got meals plus a monthly salary of 2 silver coins. Food standards would only go up, never down. So, are you in? He didn't even hesitate. Let me grab my things. I told him to recruit some strong, reliable men from his town too. He came back within an hour with 8 solid guys. 2 days later, we hit 60 members, my target. We also reached Derby City, our first trade stop and where Brian was staying permanently. Time to say goodbye. Brian introduced me to reliable grain merchants. Wheat and soybeans were 3 copper pennies per pound, rye was 1.5, and oats for horse feed were just 1 copper. Following Brian's advice, I bought 3,300 pounds of soybeans for 11 gold coins. These would sell for at least 3 gold profit in Dover City. I also bought 1,200 pounds of rye and had it baked into black bread for a tiny processing fee. Each soldier carried 20 pounds, 10 days of food. I loaded a whole wagon with horse feed, a mix of oats and soybeans at 2 copper per pound, plus alfalfa hay. The horse costs were staggering. 5 horses ate 50 pounds of grain feed daily, 100 copper pennies, plus 160 pounds of hay costing another 32 copper. That's 132 copper per day just for horses, enough to feed 22 soldiers. And these were just work horses. War horses ate even better. No wonder cavalry was for the rich. I decided to keep only 1 scout horse and cut 2 from Brian's original setup. After everything, I had just over 8 gold coins left. We stayed 1 night and set out the next morning. Brian saw us off at the city gate. Take it slow, little brother. Build your foundation before reaching for bigger things. I laughed. I'll be back next month for drinks. Now loaded with cargo, we had to take the dangerous border route. We headed north to the frontier, then turned west. I had Mike scouting constantly on horseback. The morning passed without any beastman sightings. Nothing like the nightmare near Monarch City. But after lunch, Mike galloped back. Captain, small jackal man tribe ahead. Newly arrived. About 200 total, maybe 70 warriors. Go around them, I ordered. Most of our men are raw recruits with zero combat ability. We can't risk a fight. Once this trade run is done, we'll find a place to set up camp and train properly. That's when we start fighting for real, Mike nodded reluctantly. We slipped past that tribe, then dodged another one in the afternoon, also freshly migrated. The pattern was clear. Beastmen were flooding south in large numbers. War was inevitable. I needed to get these 60 men into fighting shape before it started. Over the next few days, we avoided several more tribes using the same careful tactics. But finally, one tribe spotted us. The beastmen who found us were cautious. They saw our numbers and weapons and decided not to attack, just trailed us from a distance. I scared them off, and we kept moving. 5 days later, we finally reached Dova City. This was the kingdom's western edge, bordering the Chinza Khanate. Brian had told me the two nations fought a war decades ago. Neither could beat the other. The Khanate had superior cavalry for open battles, but couldn't crack the kingdom's cities. Eventually, both sides gave up. Dova City was far more prosperous than Monarch, bigger population, larger area. Following Brian's instructions, I sold all 3,300 pounds of soybeans at 4 copper pennies per pound. Prices had gone up by a copper since Brian's time, probably because of fewer merchants risking the route now. My 11 gold investment turned into 14 gold and 20 silver. Not bad at all. Then I went shopping for cargo. The main moneymaker was a special thick cowhide, 30 pounds per sheet, perfect for making high-grade leather armor. It cost 10 silver per sheet here and sold for at least 20 silver in Monarch City. I needed 111 sheets to fill my wagons. That came to 37 gold coins. I checked my wallet. Just over 22 gold. A 15 gold shortfall. I couldn't stomach leaving half my wagons empty for a 20-day round trip. I gritted my teeth and sold 3 sets of half-body iron armor for 18 gold. They fetched 6 gold each here. Actually more expensive than in Monarch since iron was scarcer in cattle country. It hurt, but I filled every wagon. I spent another gold on dried meat for the road. 2 pounds per person for energy during the march. Meat was incredibly cheap here. Just 5 copper per pound for fresh beef and lamb, 10 copper for jerky. In Monarch City, jerky sold for at least 20 copper. The profit margins on everything were enormous. Just as I was about to leave, Zorn came running up breathlessly. Captain, the Count's office just issued a frontier decree. Anyone who destroys 3 beastman tribes and brings proof to the Lord's office gets a settlement permit. My heart jumped. The authorities were cracking under border pressure and mobilizing civilians. The proof they wanted was probably livestock and supplies from destroyed tribes, free military aid disguised as a reward program. Clever. I was tempted but decided to wait and watch. This wasn't where I wanted to build my base yet. We left immediately. I was too broke to afford a night's lodging. By evening, we'd made some distance and camped. The next morning, we headed back. By noon, Mike had already spotted 3 tribes. One noticed us, but backed off after following briefly. Even though most of my men were green recruits, our appearance was intimidating. 2 soldiers in iron armor with great swords and axes, 21 in iron-reinforced leather, 8 archers in double-layer leather, and 29 spearmen in regular leather. Enough to make any small tribe think twice, even if my men were mostly for show. After lunch, we barely started moving when Mike came galloping back again. Captain, another trading caravan up ahead is getting attacked by jackal men. About 50 beastmen against 60 humans, but 20 of those humans are running around like headless chickens. Only 30 are actually fighting. I wrestled with myself. Only about 20 of my own men could hold up in real combat. The rest might break at the first sight of jackal men. But I decided to at least try scaring the beastmen off. If that failed, we'd run. If we couldn't run, well, armies are forged in fire. Zorn spoke up. Captain, what if we waited until the caravan gets wiped out? Then swooped in for their cargo and wagons. For a split second I was tempted. Then I shook my head. Too risky. There aren't many caravans on this route. We'd be traced easily and couldn't explain ourselves. Zorn nodded. You're right. I wasn't thinking. I gave him an encouraging smile. Don't be discouraged. I like that you speak up with ideas. I discussed the plan with my squad leaders, and everyone agreed. We formed up, 11 shield bearers in front, leaders with great swords and axes on the flanks, archers behind the shields, and spearmen at the rear. Most of the new recruits looked terrified. I started talking them up. Relax, boys. They've got less than 50. We've got 60, 2 iron-armored warriors, and better weapons across the board. This is going to be easy. Bruce jumped in on cue. Nobody steal my kills. My axe is starving. Julian played along too. This is the easiest fight I've ever walked into. We'll scare them off just by showing up. The veterans all agreed loudly. A walk in the park, they said. The new recruits relaxed a little. Then I dropped the real motivator. 1 silver coin for every jackal man you kill. No limit. That got a cheer. But it also made me sad. This army ran on money. That was its soul and its ceiling. Without land to settle their families, without honor or legacy to offer, money was all I had. And money alone would never forge true elite soldiers. We approached the battlefield. The besieged caravan was down to about 20 fighters, completely trapped. When both sides noticed us, everything stopped. A big middle-aged man from the caravan screamed, "Strangers, please help us. I'll pay my entire fortune, 32 gold coins." I didn't move. Plus a full wagon of cargo. Deal, I said with a smile. We advanced slowly. The jackal man leader studied us. Instead of running, greed took over. Our equipment was dazzling. He barked a strange howl, and his warriors abandoned the trapped caravan to charge at us instead. The 20-odd surviving caravan fighters didn't hesitate. Without a shred of gratitude, they turned and sprinted away. I wasn't surprised. Amateurs. Nearly 50 jackal men charging was a terrifying sight. I could see fear flooding back into my new recruits' faces. At 100 meters, I started shooting. Several jackal men dropped before they knew what hit them. But glancing at my archers, 1 was frozen stiff. 2 were fumbling arrows all over the ground. Useless. I ignored them and kept firing. Javelin throwers ready. Behind me, almost 50 spearmen scrambled to put down their spears and set up the atlatls. A third of them dropped their javelins on the ground. Some just stood there paralyzed. Less than half actually got ready in time. I emptied my quiver, 6 jackal men down. Mike had dismounted and gotten at least 3. Of the 7 new archers, only 2 managed to hit anything at all. The jackal men were down to under 40. At 20 meters I screamed, "Javelins, throw!" Out of 30 men who'd prepared, only 20 actually launched. And before any javelin reached the enemy, I heard a scream from my own side. 1 panicking soldier had accidentally speared his teammate's thigh. The new recruits nearly broke right there. Still, about a dozen javelins made it into the jackal men's ranks and took down 5 more. They were at just over 30 now. Shield wall. Smash them. The shield bearers charged forward and slammed into the leading jackal men, shoving them backward. Bruce, Julian, and Zorn plunged into the enemy with their massive 2-handed weapons. Mike remounted, grabbed a lance from the ground, rode wide, and started his charge. I didn't join yet. I stood on high ground and watched everything. The veterans were magnificent. But when I turned to check the new recruits, 40 men, only 9 had grabbed weapons and rushed in to help. 8 were standing in place, frozen. 13 were fumbling to switch weapons, some tripping over their own feet. And 9 had turned around and run away. I nearly cracked my teeth from clenching my jaw so hard. I grabbed a shield and sword and charged into the fight. These 30-something jackal men were nothing like the exhausted ones we'd fought before. They were fresh, strong, fast, and hitting hard. My men were getting pushed back. But the veterans shone. Bruce swung his massive battle axe through the jackal men like a wrecking ball, crushing 1 skull in seconds. A jackal man stabbed him in the back with a stone-tipped spear. It shattered against his iron armor. Bruce barely stumbled before spinning around and driving the spike on his axe handle straight through the creature's chest. It tried to bite him, but he kicked it flying. Julian was carving through them with his 2-handed broadsword until 3 shield-bearing jackal men cornered him, bashing and poking with stone spears that clattered uselessly against his iron plate. He chopped their spears in half, then started hacking at their shields. I ran over to help. A jackal man charged me with his shield. I sidestepped and slashed his arm open. Before he could react, Julian's sword came down and took the arm clean off. I stabbed him through the stomach. Done. Mike was spectacular. He'd galloped out wide, built up speed, and came thundering back with his lance leveled. He skewered 2 jackal men on a single charge, like threading them on a stick, pinning them both to the ground. He dropped the lance, rode out, grabbed another one from the dirt, and came charging back again. The old guard, the experienced shield fighters, worked beautifully together. Their iron-reinforced leather stopped most attacks, letting them just bash and slash without worrying about defense. But the new recruits were a disaster. About 20 of them were being chased by a dozen jackal men, on the edge of total collapse. I screamed, "Julian, Bruce, go help the new guys. They're breaking." Both of them sprinted over. I followed, shouting at the recruits, "Hold your spears. Stab what's in front of you." Hearing my voice seemed to give them a backbone. They stopped panicking and started poking back. Their technique was awful. The jackal men dodged almost everything, but numbers helped, and a few lucky thrusts found targets. Then Bruce arrived and sent a jackal man flying with one swing of his axe. Julian split another one in half with his broadsword. Together with the recruits, we cut down all the jackal men in that group within minutes. We rushed back to help the veterans finish the rest. The last dozen or so jackal men realized they were done and bolted. I ordered pursuit. Mike ran them down on horseback while the veterans chased on foot. We killed all but 2, which I kept alive as guides to their camp. I sent Mike back to protect our wagons and round up deserters. After another 5 minutes of chasing, we reached the tribe's camp. I shot the 2 guides and we charged in. Most of the tribe's remaining members fled. We only killed a few who fought back. Just children were left. We cleaned up fast and hurried back to the original battlefield. The rescued caravan manager was waiting for us. He walked up immediately. "Thank you for saving us." "I'm Amy, the caravan manager." He pulled out a money bag and handed it over. 32 gold coins, as promised. He pointed at a nearby wagon. "And that wagon with 1,100 pounds of soybeans is yours too." I took everything without pretending otherwise. Choosing a fair deal instead of letting them die and looting everything was already generous enough. "Where were you headed, Amy? How did you run into these jackal men?" His face turned bitter. "We were transporting soybeans to Dova City. They spotted us almost immediately. If you hadn't shown up, we'd all be dead." "Where are you headed?" "This road is crawling with beastman tribes. We're heading to Monarch City." "What about you? Going forward or turning back?" Amy shook his head immediately. "I'm done. If I run into more beastmen, I won't be this lucky again. I'm going back. But we're heading the same direction for about 4 days. I'll pay you 2 gold coins to escort us. That's all I can manage since my remaining cargo is only worth 4 or 5 gold. I'll pay once we reach the city." My eyes narrowed. "Are you planning to keep running this route?" "Never again," he said flatly. "Then sell me your wagons and horses." He didn't hesitate. 7 gold coins per wagon, and that's only because you saved my life. They'd go for 8 in the city. I agreed. Fair price for healthy draft horses in their prime. I also bought all his remaining grain and horse feed for 20 gold. Just like that, my caravan nearly doubled to 7 wagons. Amy gave me a contact address, then fled south with his surviving mercenaries. Now I could finally assess the damage. It was ugly. 6 dead, 8 seriously wounded, over a dozen lightly hurt, and 5 missing. This single fight had nearly crippled my company. The victory came down to me, the squad leaders, and the javelin throwers. Without those elements, we'd have been crushed even with twice the numbers. I looked at the 40 men still standing. Their eyes had changed, though. The terror was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Combat did that. The Jackal Man tribe's loot was massive. 7 cattle, 3 horses, 150 sheep, nearly 800 pounds of dried meat, 21 cowhides, and over 310 sheepskins, worth dozens of gold coins at least. By noon, the deserters started trickling back, all but 2, who were probably gone for good. I checked their hometowns later. The 3 who returned got 2 choices: leave with no pay for abandoning their comrades, or stay as auxiliary soldiers with no salary and only 2 pounds of black bread daily until they killed an enemy and earned back full status. 1 left. 2 stayed. For people this desperate, even bread was better than serfdom. I set up camp in a hidden spot and sent Kevin, Bruce, Julian, Mike, and Zorn out to recruit replacements, strong, brave free men between 15 and 40 who couldn't afford to eat. The offer was 2 pounds of bread daily, guaranteed as long as the company existed. Earn a salary by proving yourself. I gave each recruiter authority for up to 30 men and 1 gold coin for travel expenses. They had 10 days, enough time for the wounded to recover enough to walk. This battle had taught me something important. Courage wasn't about body strength or pay. I needed to cast a wide net and let the weak ones wash out naturally. While everyone was gone, I untethered the draft horses to graze freely. Just a pound of beans each per day since they weren't hauling anything. I treated the wounded with homemade medicine from thistle and dandelion. Whether they'd survive was up to luck. Then I started real training. Drawing on memories from my past life, I began with formation drills. These farmers couldn't tell left from right, so I tied a rope to one leg on each man to help them figure it out. For javelin troops, I had them practice loading the otlotl at least 100 times daily. No more fumbling in combat. Spearmen trained with weighted poles for an hour of balance work, then 200 thrusting repetitions on straw dummies. Shield fighters practiced grip strength with rocks tied to their shields, then drilled basic cuts, thrusts, and shield charges. I set up sparring matches with leather-wrapped blades dipped in mud so they could see where they got hit. Archers practiced shooting, but also trained with two-handed weapons. Most of them were the biggest men in the company and needed close combat skills too. 10 days passed. The soldiers learned to march in formation and charge with reasonably even steps. The otlotl usage became smooth and natural. Accuracy still needed work, but that would come with time. Every unit improved noticeably during those 10 days. The shield fighters learned to block and counter properly instead of just wildly bashing. The archers could now at least hit a cow. Before, that wasn't guaranteed. Area fire would work fine. Their two-handed weapon skills were basic but passable. I wanted to add running, push-ups, and sit-ups to the routine, but my wallet said no. That kind of training burns energy and requires protein and fat to recover. Without proper food, the men would just be sore and weakened, dangerous in the wilderness. 2 of my seriously wounded soldiers died from infected wounds. The rest recovered fully. I was amazed at how resilient people's bodies were in this world. Julian returned first with a full 30 recruits, ragged, holding crude wooden spears, but alive and willing. He said it had been easy. He'd only visited 2 towns before hitting his limit. Most were destitute free men on the verge of selling themselves into serfdom. All he had to promise was 1 pound of uncut black bread per day and the chance to earn wages. Bruce came back an hour later with another 30. Then Zorn, Mike, and Kevin each brought 30 more. Suddenly my camp had exploded to 197 people, 46 trained fighters, and 150 raw recruits. I'd planned to keep marching, but one look at this undisciplined mob changed my mind. I gave them a week of training first. I handed out captured Beastman leather armor to the new recruits and used my trained soldiers as drill instructors. Given the recruits' terrible physical condition, I kept it to 3 skills: marching in formation for discipline, spear thrusting for basic combat ability, and rotating practice with the otlotl. To fuel the training, I added 1/3 of a pound of fresh meat per person daily. After a few days, I cut 32 men. 6 were troublemakers. I expelled them immediately. When they demanded compensation, my 46 armed soldiers pointed weapons at them, and they slunk away. 8 had mental limitations. They couldn't handle anything requiring coordination. I kept them around for simple tasks, feeding them a pound of bread daily. When I eventually got land, they could farm. 18 were too physically weak for standard training. I reduced their load to 1/3 and let them rest the other time to build strength. That left 118 who met basic standards, though still weak. After a full week, their bearing had transformed. They had order, discipline, and could march properly. We set out again, nearly 200 strong. The sight of our column scared every Beastman tribe along the route into hiding. Nobody even dared peek at us. For days later, we reached Derby City. Our 3 wagons of soybeans were completely eaten, 11 gold coins worth of food consumed during training. Soybeans cost more than rye, but their higher energy meant each person only needed about a pound per day. The downside was digestive problems. I sold all the captured Beastman loot, livestock, hides, dried meat, for 39 gold coins. More than I'd expected. Without this windfall, I never could have recruited at this scale. I started planning a special marching bread, 70% rye and 30% soybean. The soybeans added protein and fat, boosting energy density significantly. At about 1.5 pounds per person per day, it would keep everyone fed and functional. Eventually, I'd add cooking oil to the rations, But oil was absurdly expensive in this world, even more than dried meat. For now, soybeans were a decent substitute. I bought 4,900 pounds of soybeans and 6,300 pounds of rye. The shop owner gave me a discount for the bulk order, 26 gold coins total. I had 2,700 pounds of soybeans and all the rye baked into my special marching bread for another 2 gold in processing fees. Having no territory of my own meant paying extra for everything. I loaded 1.5 wagons with 5 days of horse feed, leaving some space to carry weak soldiers in rotation. Each man would carry nearly 30 pounds of bread, 20 days of food. Heavy, but if they could handle it, they'd build serious endurance. My 70-something gold coins had already shrunk by a third. It hurt. I reorganized the command structure. Zorn became deputy trade manager. Mike, trained in riding and archery, with good strategic sense, and technically my creditor, became deputy commander of the company. Kevin, my first recruit, got promoted to squad captain. Bruce and Julian, both powerful fighters with leadership ability, also became captains. Each managed 20 men. Kevin handled shield fighters, Bruce and Julian the spearmen. Every veteran got 3 new recruits assigned to them. Once a recruit proved his courage, he could become a full member, though I capped the company at 100 regulars. 2 days into the border wilderness, Mike came galloping back. Captain, no doghead tribes around, but I found a Jackalman tribe about 10 miles out. They're under attack. Pigheads are hitting them hard. The Jackalmen are losing badly. I perked up immediately, then hesitated. The last battle's chaos was fresh in my mind. If both tribes turned on me, I'd be in serious trouble. My captains were eager, though. Kevin pointed out we had no more meat or livestock, bad for a long march. Bruce said the soldiers needed real combat experience. Julian whispered that we were spending too much feeding men who'd never been tested. I gave in and led 150 soldiers forward, leaving the wagons behind with the weak auxiliaries as guards. When both fighting tribes saw us, they froze. The Jackalman chief recovered first and attacked the pigheads while they were distracted. I shouted, "Help the Jackalman! Kill the pigheads first!" My archers and I opened fire. At 20 meters, the javelin throwers let loose. Waves of pighead warriors fell. The Jackalmen tore into them from the other side. Soon fewer than 20 pigheads remained standing. They broke and ran. The Jackalmen chased them down. When the Jackalmen returned, a leader with blue-tinged facial hair approached cautiously, flashing a toothy grin. His people brought out 20 large sheep, 2 adult cattle, and at least 200 pounds of dried meat as payment. My captain stared in amazement. Julian whispered excitedly, "Captain, they just got hit hard. We could crush them with almost no losses." Bruce agreed. Only Kevin stayed silent. I ignored them both. I'd been thinking about something bigger. I walked to the front of my army and started a pantomime, pointing at all the Jackalmen, then at myself, then back at them. The chief didn't react. I tried again, more dramatically. After a while, something clicked. He growled, barked orders into the camp, and more livestock came out, 10 adult sheep, another cow, and about 50 pounds of dried meat. He thought I was demanding more tribute. He wanted to buy us off, not submit. I wasn't having it. I waved my hand forward. Advance. But don't attack unless absolutely necessary. My captains were confused, dancing 1 minute, threatening the next, but they passed the order down. The soldiers pressed forward step by step. With every step, the Jackalmen's panic grew. They could see our armor, our numbers, several times their remaining strength. At 50 meters, the chief finally cracked. He raised both furry hands and waved them frantically, howling what could only be surrender. My soldiers kept advancing until we were less than 20 meters away. The Jackalman warriors raised their weapons and snarled. Their chief stood between us, waving at me to stop with one hand while shouting orders at his own people with the other. Slowly, most of the Jackalmen lowered their weapons. But 8 warriors refused, gripping their spears and growling at their own chief. At this range, my javelin throwers could wipe out half of them in a single volley. Fortunately, the chief talked the last 8 into putting down their weapons. Julian couldn't contain himself. "Captain, you're amazing." One little dance, and they surrendered. "Do we charge now?" I snapped at him. "Do you want to be captain instead? You think I went through all that trouble just to slaughter them?" He shut up, grinning sheepishly behind his hand. I explained my real plan to the squad leaders. I'm going to absorb this entire tribe. Keeping their families together gives us leverage. I won't enslave them. I'll recruit them. We saved their lives today, which is a good starting point. And we have no territory of our own. This could be an opportunity. Mike warned me quietly that most humans who tried to control beastmen got killed for it. I nodded. I'd be careful. I smiled at the Jackalman chief and waved him over. His warriors howled in protest, but he walked over anyway. I grabbed his furry hand and raised it high, then pointed at my soldiers and his people, sweeping my arm to show unity. He looked confused at first, then something clicked. I walked with him into the tribe. We counted 218 Jackalmen total, 38 adult warriors, 54 teenagers, 114 children and infants, and just 12 elders. 9 warriors had died fighting the pigheads. This chief ran a well-managed tribe. The fact that elders even existed here was impressive. The previous Jackalman tribe I'd encountered had none. Their livestock was substantial: 5 horses, 11 cattle, and 457 sheep. I left 10 veterans and 50 recruits to guard the tribe, then led the remaining soldiers plus all Jackalman warriors toward the pighead camp. Half an hour later, we arrived. My men formed ranks and advanced from one direction, while the Jackalmen attacked from another. A few rounds of javelin throws, and we charged in. Only teenagers and children remained. No real resistance. They scattered quickly. I didn't order pursuit. Instead, I headed straight for the animal pens. Some Jackalmen were already there, baring their teeth when my soldiers approached. The chief ran over and beat those Jackalmen until they yelped. I pulled him off, then patted the growling Jackalmen on the shoulders. I pointed at the livestock and held up a gesture meaning half. The chief's eyes went wide. Then he started wagging his tail. Actually wagging his tail. We split the loot evenly. 5 horses, 9 cattle, 240-plus sheep, over 900 pounds of dried meat, 29 cowhides, and 261 sheepskins. The Jackalmen only took half the dried meat and refused the rest, making grateful gestures I eventually understood as thanks for helping them fight the pigheads. Then came the hard part. Through elaborate pantomime, I tried to explain that this area would become very dangerous, that a massive human army would eventually sweep through from the south and kill every beastman they found. I grabbed a handful of beans, 1 bean for my group, then a huge pile for the coming human forces. I pointed at the pile, then at a Jackalman corpse on the ground. It took a long time, but the chief finally understood. He didn't hesitate. He nodded and ran back into the camp. Almost immediately, loud arguing erupted from inside. Not everyone agreed with his decision. After a while, the Jackalmen started taking down their tents. The chief had won the argument. Soon we were marching through the wilderness as the strangest army anyone had ever seen. Humans and Jackalmen side by side, with their 2 leaders communicating through wild hand gestures. By evening, we reached the valley where I'd wiped out the pighead tribe weeks ago. I'd had my eye on this place since the first time I saw it. I pointed the Jackalmen to the open ground outside the valley entrance and gestured for them to set up camp there. Then I pointed at the valley itself and at my own people. The chief understood and started directing his tribe. This was going to be our permanent base. The company couldn't keep wandering forever. We needed a training ground, a home, and fewer wasted expenses. This valley was perfect, a river running through it, a larger river nearby for future transport, mountains on all sides, and a narrow entrance that a handful of men could defend. The Jackalmen camped outside would serve as an early warning system. I had no noble title, which meant this would be an unofficial settlement with no legal protection. Any nearby noble could harass us. But I wasn't worried. Once we sealed the valley entrance with walls, we'd be nearly untouchable inside. That night, I gathered my captains and explained the plan. Bruce, Julian, and Kevin had no objections. Mike raised concerns about nobles targeting us and the risk of the Jackalmen turning violent. Your thinking matches mine exactly, Mike, I said. We stay hidden until we're strong enough. As for the Jackalmen, I have ways to manage them. And if that fails, they're no match for us anyway. I gave Kevin his assignment. He'd stay permanently in the valley with all the weak auxiliaries, the disabled laborers, 5 veterans, and 10 regular recruits. His main tasks: prepare the valley entrance for wooden walls and collect as much grass as possible, drying it slowly over low fires to build up our own hay supply so we'd stop hemorrhaging money on horse feed. When I return from Monarch City, I'll bring iron axes and nails. Then you start cutting trees and building walls. They don't need to look pretty, just strong. And do not provoke the jackalmen. If they attack, surrender everything and wait for the main force. But I don't think that will happen. Kevin looked disappointed about being left behind and nervous about living next to Jackalman, but he nodded firmly. The next morning, I spent half an hour gesturing at the Jackalman chief until he understood I needed his help on the road. He agreed and brought 30 warriors along. I took all the livestock too. I wanted to keep the cattle for plowing, but I was too broke. Everything had to be sold. After one day of travel, the chief grew anxious and wanted to go back. No amount of gesturing calmed him. Taking him on a trading trip was too complex to explain through pantomime. Eventually, he let 20 warriors return to the tribe and continued with just 9. I had them scout ahead. That was easy enough to communicate.